Snow blew across the frost-crusted parapets of Winterfell as dawn bled into the sky, turning the distant forests the color of old bruises. Jon Snow stood alone atop the battlements, cloak snapping at his heels, ghost silent at his side. Each breath hung before him like a whispered omen, and the direwolf's red eyes gleamed with an unease that mirrored his own. Even after the long night, with the north still licking its wounds, peace felt brittle, too easily broken by a careless word, a restless dream, or the slow awakening of something ancient that had slept beneath stone and ice. He uncurled his fingers. 3 smooth palm-sized stones rested in his gloved hand. One black as cinder glass veined with crimson, one the deep sea green of northern pines, and one pale gold flecked with threads of fiery orange. They were warm despite the cold wind, warm with an inner pulse that felt strangely in time with his heart. Sam had found mention of such eggs in old records. Valyrian, predating the Doom by half a millennium, lost during Aegon's conquest when some forgotten scion of House Targaryen fled northward in secret. Jon had imagined the records in Old Maester's fancy. Yet here they were, dug from a collapsed crypt beneath the first keep, nested in dry peat and dust, as though waiting for him. A raven croaked overhead. Jon closed his fist over the eggs, feeling their muted throb against his skin, a heartbeat within a heartbeat. He tried to push away the rising tremor of possibility. Dragons, not statues of crumbling wings and long-dead bone, but living fire reborn from stone. He had watched Rhaegal die above the narrow sea, his emerald wings pierced by scorpion bolts. Drogon's roar still echoed in his nightmares, a lament for brother and rider alike. And he had felt the heat of Viserion's frost-blue breath gutter out when the Night King fell. Yet, here lay the chance for new life. 3 lives, to answer loss with rebirth. Ghost pressed his muzzle against Jon's thigh. The dire wolf's hackles were raised, but not in fear, more in knowing disquiet, as though he sensed paths dividing beneath the snow. Jon stroked the white fur absently while his gaze slipped south. Beyond Wintertown's smoking chimneys, beyond the tangle of bare woodlands, toward horizons he could not see. Somewhere Daenerys Targaryen sailed across the summer sea, her fleet nursing wounds and pride alike. She believed herself the last dragon, bonded to the only creature that could still turn sky to furnace at her whim. She believed herself alone in that birthright. If he hatched these eggs, she would not be alone anymore. Nor would he. Footsteps approached. Aria ghosted through the swirling flakes, hair tied back, gray travel leathers dusted white. She had always moved lightly, but since Braavos, there was something of shadow to her tread, as if she borrowed silence itself. Her eyes fell to his closed fist, and the faint sheen of warmth bleeding through the glove. "You look like father standing watch," she said, voice soft enough not to carry. Except father never glowed. Jon offered her a wry half-smile, but it faltered quickly. "Do you feel it?" He opened his palm. Arya's breath caught. "They're alive?" She reached, hesitated, then brushed a fingertip across the green egg's surface. Her eyes widened. "Hot as forge iron." "I don't know how," Jon murmured. "Sam thinks dragonfire or a great blaze might wake them, as with Daenerys in the red waste. But the tales are muddled." Tales," Aria repeated, half laughing. "You mean to set yourself on fire?" Jon turned back to the sunrise. Shards of coral and rose seeped over the wall's broken shadow far to the north. "If that's what it takes." She rested a hand on his shoulder, fingers hard despite their smallness. "You died once for the realm, Jon. I don't fancy burning you for it. There must be other ways." He wanted to believe that. He wanted to imagine Maester Aemon's long-lost scrolls might yield a safer ritual. Yet every legend spoke of blood and flame, of sacrifice and heat too fierce for mortal flesh. And somewhere deep, beneath the burn scar of his own strange resurrection, he felt another truth. The dragons would answer not only to fire, but to him, to the song hidden in his veins since the day Lyanna bled beneath the Tower of Joy. A horn sounded from the courtyard. 2 short blasts. Riders had been sighted on the King's Road. Jon slipped the eggs into a fur-lined satchel and followed Aria down the steps, Ghost padding behind. By midday, the guests were led squelching through the gate, horses steaming, banners limp with meltwater. Lady Sansa waited in the yard beside Brienne, face carved from patience. The visitors wore the crowned stag and the soaring falcon. Gendry Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, and Lord Robin Arryn of the Eyrie, both flushed with cold and youth. They had come to discuss alliances, grain tariffs, the fragile confederation that barely held the North, the Vale and the Stormlands together, after wars, unending. But their eyes flicked to Jon in silent appraisal. They had heard the songs of the man who slew the Night King, the man who bent the knee to a dragon queen, then watched her burn a city. Jon greeted them with measured courtesy. Gendry clasped his forearm warmly. Storm's End sends its strength, Lord Snow. Just Jon. He had no stomach for titles. The lordships may still argue that. Robin's voice quivered with nervous pride. He was trying to sound older, like the lords of the Vale he emulated. His gaze slid to Aria and caught blue meeting steel gray. A blush rose. Aria's lip twitched, but she inclined her head in greeting, graceful as a cat pretending not to stalk a bird. Across the yard the forge roared. Gendry's attention veered. He had always been more blacksmith than lord, and the ring of hammer on anvil sang to him like prayer. Jon offered to show them the rebuilt glass gardens first, but Sansa's subtle shake of head reminded him of priorities, the talks. They convened in the great hall, its high rafters hung with fresh banners of direwolf and green glass candles. The fire on the hearth was brighter than necessary, but Jon lingered near its heat, feeling the eggs stir in the satchel at his hip. He forced himself to listen as Sansa laid out inventories, barley yields, sheep tallies, the need for new ships to patrol White Harbor. Jon nodded at intervals, but his mind drifted to warmth, to flames, to the ancient words he had read by candlelight in the crypt. When stone yields to blood and flame, the dragon stirs. He felt as though two rivers coursed through him. Duty to the realm, and the older, wilder tide of dragon's blood snarling to be free. Night fell violet and silver. The council retired to chambers heavy with spiced wine. Jon walked the snow-dusted cloister between the first keep and the godswood, the eggs pressed close to his ribs. Ghost loped ahead, white fur haloed by moonlight. Jon's breath plumed. Each lungful felt hot now, as though the eggs were translating their heat into him. The heart tree waited, a pale giant with weeping red eyes. Candles guttered before its roots, left by villagers seeking favor. Jon knelt, laying the eggs in the moss. The weirwood's carved face watched, impassive. He stripped off his glove, drew a dagger, and scored a shallow cut across his palm. Warm blood welled. Smear of crimson on snow. He let it drip across the black egg, then the green, then the gold. The shells sizzled faintly where blood touched. "I am the son of ice and fire," he whispered, voice trembling. "If you are truly meant for me, wake. Wake and know my name." Silence thickened. The godswood wind sighed. Somewhere, a raven flapped through the branches. A brittle crack rang in the stillness. Jon's breath hitched. A hairline fracture spidered across the black egg's glossy surface, leaking a thread of pale light. The green egg answered, fractures blooming like fresh ivy. The gold quivered, humming. Ghost snarled, backing away. Jon's pulse pounded. He reached for the black egg, and heat seared his skin. Yet he did not flinch. The shell split open beneath his fingertips, peeling in molten shards. A tiny creature unfurled, crimson black scales glittering, wings slick, eyes like molten garnet. It squealed, a high, keening note that stirred something deep in Jon's marrow, and nuzzled the bloody cut on his hand, tasting him. The green egg burst next. Emerald wings flexed, dew-bright, and the hatchling shook like a wet pup. Its eyes were sapphire pools, ancient and ageless, locking onto Jon with fierce imprinting. The gold cracked last, spilling a gust of sulfur-hot steam. From the shards crawled a pale dragon tinged with flame orange along its crest, eyes a curious amber. 3 hatchlings clambered onto his lap, steaming in the cold. Jon laughed, a sound half choked, half wonder. Tears stung his eyes. He had watched dragons die. Now he watched them live. They scented his blood, his warmth, and they were his. A sudden flare lit the treetops. Ghost whined. Jon turned and froze. Bran Stark hovered in his carved wheelchair at the edge of the clearing, pushed by Podrick Payne. The firelight of the hatchling's birth played across Bran's impassive face, but in his eyes swirled reflections of things unseen. The past, the future's branching shadows. Ravens crowded the branches behind him, black leaves in a silent storm. Bran spoke, calm as still water. Magic always balances itself, Jon. 3 for 3. Life for life. Jon rose slowly, hatchlings clinging to his shoulders and arms. Whose life? He asked, dread rising. Bran's gaze flicked skyward. Not here. Far south. And soon the flame will know. A chill deeper than winter slid down Jon's spine. He thought of Dragonstone's black ramparts, of a queen whose grief still smoldered like wildfire. Storm churned the narrow sea when Daenerys felt the first tremor beneath Drogon's scaly hide. She lay across his withers, the great dragon gliding low over white-capped waves, wings raking spray from crest to crest. Below, Asha Greyjoy's longships followed the plume of Drogon's shadow, sails taut with wind. The alliance of Ironborn and Unsullied made for Meereen to regroup and heal. Sudden heat flooded Drogon's throat, an involuntary guttural roar tada. He banked sharply. Daenerys clutched the ridges of his spine. What is it? She murmured in Valyrian. The dragon answered with a growl she felt in her bones. More emotion than word. Brother, sister, arise. Daenerys' heart stuttered. In the year since Rhaegal's death, Drogon had flown silent, mourning Gowland. Now his flames stirred unbidden. She tasted ash on her tongue, though no fire burned. Her blood sang a warning. Dragons had always been bound to her life's thread. If there were new hatchlings in the world, she would feel it. And she did. 3 faint heartbeats humming at the edge of consciousness. Distant as stars, yet growing brighter. She turned Drogon east, toward rising sun and memory. Take us higher, she whispered. The dragon obeyed, wing beats heaving skyward, until clouds shredded against their talons. Daenerys closed her eyes against the wind. Somewhere, someone had woken dragons without her. The thought chilled even as it cracked open an old hunger. Because if dragons once more hatched from stone, perhaps the dream of a Targaryen world restored was not dead. Perhaps her claim was not alone. Who, she wondered, could summon such fire? The Magi of Qarth were gone. The Red Priests served their own flames. Only one name burned through her mind, white and relentless as dragonfire. Aegon, Jon, my blood, my betrayer. Anger licked her nerves. She had forgiven his dagger at Dragonstone, forgiven his haunted eyes when the ashes of King's Landing stained his cheeks. But she had not forgiven the choice buried beneath, that he would rather kill her than let her rule. Now she felt the sky shift in obedience to his pulse, as it once had to hers. She opened her eyes. Drogon roared, shaking cloud tops. The longships scattered below like dark petals on slate water. Daenerys shivered, exhilaration and dread at war within her. She would follow this invisible tether to its source. She would see who presumed to hatch dragons in the world she meant to forge. And if it was Jon Snow, she would face him beneath twin thrones of smoke and wing. Days stretched in Winterfell, heavy with the hush that follows miracles. Jon kept the hatchlings in a scalding vault beneath the first keep, where forges once smelted raw weirwood resin into pigments for glass. Bronze braziers roared night and day, stoked by smiths sworn to secrecy. Aria lingered often, fascinated, feeding the dragons slivers of venison while they hissed and spat sparks. She named them in the old tongue. Skanir for the black, shadow. Varen for the green, spring. Oryx for the gold, dawn. Names born of northern myth, not Valyrian, yet the hatchlings seemed to answer with growing intellect. Jon felt their thoughts as flickers. hunger, awe, swift flashes of recognition whenever he entered the vault. They imprinted like goslings, following him with scuttling urgency. Ghost regarded them warily, nose wrinkling each time their tiny flame breaths flared. But Secrecy frayed. Gendry came upon Jon in the vault one evening, seeking him for a smithing commission, and gasped at the sight of 3 scaled serpents circling Jon's boots. Shock bled to wonder, then trepidation. "The Queen," he stammered. "What of her claim?" Jon's jaw tightened. A world with more than one dragon need not bleed. Gendry studied him, blue eyes weighing the truth. "You sound like a man praying," he said at last. "Maybe I am." Jon stroked Skanir's spine. The hatchling arched, sparks crackling along its dorsal spines. Praying that fire can build more than it burns. Yet he could not banish the echo of Bran's warning. Life for life. Far south, Daenerys would have felt the balance tip. Would she accept another rider of her blood and fire? Or would she see only a rival to be scorched from the sky? Ravens brought word within a fortnight. Daenerys had turned her fleet toward Westeros again. Small folk ports spoke of a great black dragon screaming above the dusk tides, its rider's silver-gold hair like witch-fire against the stars. Worse, fishermen whispered of 3 slim shadows trailing the black, winged ghosts, half-grown, glimpsed at twilight diving through cloud-strewn heavens. None could agree what they were, but Jon felt their truth before any letter reached him. Drogon had sired new broodlings during his exile across the Summer Isles. Daenerys would not come alone, so the sky would host 5 dragons, not 1. 5 hearts bound to 2 claimants of fire and ash. When the first snow of deep winter fell, fat wet flakes that muffled the yard, Jon ordered the ironborn sails dismantled for extra timber. He walked the battlements beside Sansa, who kept her fur-lined cloak tight against the wind. "Westeros will tremble again," she said quietly, eyes on the far road. "We just rebuilt the north. I will not see our people buried in dragonfire once more." "I swore I'd protect them," Jon answered, "even if it means raising dragons under our roof." He turned to her, and for a moment the burden etched lines older than his years around his mouth. "Especially that. If Daenerys means to rule through fear, we need strength to stand." Sansa weighed him with stark cool gaze, yet love softened her reply. "Strength comes many forms, little brother. Just promise me you won't let theirs, nor yours, turn you into something we don't recognize." Jon thought of the blackened skulls in King's Landing's crypts, walls melted by a dragon's breath. He nodded, though certainty felt fragile as rime ice. On the night of the Feast of the Maiden's Candle, a silver moon hung like a blade over Winterfell. Towers glowed with lanterns of colored glass. Musicians practiced in the great hall, strings plucked in minor keys. It was to be a celebration of life, renewed after war. Yet tension ran beneath the revelry like cracking ice. Jon stood upon the rampart once more. Dragons perched along the crenellations. They had doubled in size, wings broader than hounds, talons beginning to curve like sickles. Their breaths left vaporous tendrils that sparked amber red. They were impatient, ready for sky if not battle. Skanir leapt onto Jon's shoulder, scales hot through fur, head cocked to the east. Jon followed the hatchling's gaze. A distant thunder rolled over the frosted pines, low, rhythmic, not of storm or hoof. Wing beats. A lone dark shape cut across the moon, vast and sleek. Drogon. He rode the wind toward Winterfell, each sweep of wings scattering clouds and swirling vortices. No fleet followed. Only the dragon and its rider. Jon released a breath. He whispered to the hatchlings in Valyrian. Command and comfort mingled. "Stand down." They crouched, muscles shivering but obeyed. Drogon descended in a spiral, gusts tearing banners from poles. Snow exploded in a wide plume as the dragon landed beyond the outer wall, claws sinking into frozen earth. Torchlight wavered, fires guttered. A hush fell over ramparts crowded with watchmen. Daenerys slid from Drogon's neck, boots crunching on ice. White hair streamed behind her like comet tail. She wore no crown, only black leather and a cloak lined with silver wolf fur. some irony not lost on Jon. He descended the steps to meet her, the dragons scuttling behind like living shadows. The courtyard was deserted save for Aria above with bow unslung, and Brienne stationed at the gate. Peace hung by no more than a breath and an oath. Daenerys stopped a sword's length away. Her violet eyes flicked to the hatchlings, nostrils flaring at their drifting smoke. She spoke quietly. "They are beautiful." Jon inclined his head. "Yours no less." Silence stretched, filled by the hiss of snow sliding from Drogon's heaving flank. Finally, Daenerys lifted her gaze to his, and for a heartbeat Jon saw not fury but deep, aching sorrow. "Why?" she asked. "Why claim what you once rejected?" Jon's throat tightened. "I never rejected our blood, only what we risked becoming. I would not see the world bend beneath dragonfire again. And yet you raise dragons." She said, bitterness soft as falling ash. "To defend, not to burn." A sad smile wavered on her lips. "Do you think fire distinguishes? It consumes. It hungers." Skynir hissed, sensing tension. Drogon growled in answer, a bass rumble that shook icicles from roof eaves. Jon lifted a hand, the hatchling quieted. He stepped closer until breath mingled. "We share a gift, Daenerys. A curse, some say. But what we choose to do with it, that is what shapes the realm. Let us shape it together." "Menno." Her eyes glistened, reflecting the torchlight like molten amethyst. For an instant, he thought she might take his hand, might remember the promise of two dragons soaring as one. But memory of ash flared behind those eyes, and the gulf reopened. She whispered, "There can be only one dragon queen." Jon swallowed the sting of those words. "And one king? No, there need be none. Only guardians. Let the realm rule itself." "Dreams of crows," she said, voice cracking. "The world bends to those who seize it. Or it breaks," he said. "We saw it break together." Her jaw trembled. Overhead, clouds scudded across the moon, plunging them into shifting gloom. Behind Daenerys, Drogon unfurled his wings with a gust that ruffled Jon's hair. Ghosts snarled from the stairwell. Steel rasped as Brienne stepped forward, but Daenerys lifted a hand, palm outward, and all stilled. "Not here," she said, eyes never leaving Jon's. "Not tonight." She turned and mounted Drogon in one fluid motion. The black dragon leapt skyward, snow devils whirling. Skynir screeched, beating fledgling wings. Jon held the hatchling against his chest, heart hammering. Above, the moon broke free of cloud. Its light haloed Drogon's silhouette a moment before he plunged east out of sight. Silence folded back over Winterfell, disturbed only by Jon's ragged breathing and the thrumming heat of three tiny dragons, born of blood and flame, bound now to a war of sky that had only begun to unfurl its wings. Oh, Ka. Snow fell through the night and lay in dazzling drifts across Winterfell's courtyards, disguising every familiar stone. By morning, the sky had cleared to a pale, blistered blue, and sunlight turned the new cover into a field of knives that dazzled every eye. Jon rose early from a sleep as restless as a battlefield after the trumpets cease. Soul torn by the echo of Daenerys' voice. There can be only one dragon queen. He had expected fire or fury, perhaps even hatred, yet what he heard most clearly in her words was grief. A grief so raw, it stung the air like salt in a wound. He dressed in silence, the muffled scrape of boiled leather and ringmail the only sound. Ghost awaited in the shadows by the door, tail twitching, white fur bright as the snow. When Jon stepped into the corridor, the direwolf loped ahead, paws soundless on the flagstones, guiding him down spiraling steps that still smelled faintly of forge smoke. Below the first keep, in the vault where heat never faltered, the young dragon stirred. Iron doors groaned. Waves of dry furnace air rolled over Jon, warm enough to prickle the skin of his cheeks. He crossed the threshold, and the hush broke in a chorus of hisses and flapping leathery wings. The three hatchlings greeted him the way pups greet a shepherd, patient yet demanding in equal measure. They had grown alarmingly overnight. Skanir's neck already arched higher than Jon's hip. Varen's wings brushed the top of a brazier's rim, scattering sparks. Oryx flexed talons long as goose quills and tested them on the hard clay floor, leaving parallel gouges that smoked. Jon knelt. They crowded him, heads nudging against his chest, tongues tasting the air for the salt and iron of his blood. Their scales were still soft along the bellies but hardening ridge by ridge, colors deepening. He fed them slivers of oiled mutton from a cedar bucket. Their small jaws snapped, eyes rolling in pleasure. Each time teeth grazed his gloves, bitter memories stirred. Visions of Drogon devouring charred corpses in Maraine's pits, of ash drifting over King's Landing's silent streets. He forced those visions down. Life for life, Bran had said. Balance. If these new dragons were born, then somewhere, perhaps in a far-off sky, another 3 had also cracked their shells. If Drogon had sired them, Daenerys would now ride with a family of 5. The realization tightened beneath Jon's ribs like mailed fist. He raised a hand, palm up. Skanir lowered his small wedge-shaped head, warm smoke fanning Jon's wrist. A whispered phrase in the high tongue rose instinctively. Zaldriz is Buzdari, Ixos Dior. A dragon is not a slave. Yet he wanted them to obey, to anchor to his voice instead of instinct. The contradiction tasted bitter on his tongue. Boots scraped behind him. Aria took one step into the vault, face flushed from the heat, eyes shining silver gray. She bore no weapons. Her hands cupped a polished iron goblet filled with fresh snow that melted even as she crossed the threshold. Wordlessly, she set it before Varen, who lapped at the cold water that pooled inside before spitting steam in delight. "They grow fast," she said. "Too fast." Jon ruffled Skanir's neck. "Every day, I feel the bond tighten." Arya's gaze sharpened. And with her, he knew whom she meant. He shook his head. "A cord between us, that phrase. The more I touch them, the more she must feel threatened." "Then make her unthreatened," Aria said with stark simplicity. "Talk again." She broke parley herself. "I heard no parley, only 2 people wounded by different fires." Aria took a breath. "We've killed enough family, Jon. Don't make us watch you do it again." Ghost uttered a low rumble, as if echoing her warning, and the dragons stilled. Jon rose. In that moment, he saw himself reflected in Aria's steel eyes. Man, brother, king that never was, holding in his hands the matches that could spark a second dance of dragons. He had not asked for this, yet the day Lyanna whispered his name into Ned Stark's care, fate had set the board. "Help me keep them hidden," he said. "If Daenerys comes north with more dragons, the realm will tremble in terror. I need time. Time to show Westeros that our fire will defend, not consume." Arya glanced toward the iron doors. "People fear what they never see almost as much as what they do." She murmured, but she nodded all the same. "I'll keep your secret until secrets turn poison." They left the vault together. Behind them, Skanir let out a curious, almost mournful trill, as though uneasy that the world beyond the melted vault might one day divide scale from blood. Sansa's council convened at noon. The great hall smelled of fresh pine boughs and smoke-cured ham. Static sparks dancing above the feasting tables, stripped of merriment. Only maps lay upon the oaken planks. Maps of Westeros, the narrow sea, and coastlines as far as Pentos. Melting wax dripped from tall iron candelabra. Each flame bowed at unseen drafts that whispered beneath doors. Sansa sat a high-backed chair beside the hearth, pale flame painting her hair a deeper auburn. On her right stood Brienne. To her left perched Maester Wolkan, quill hovering. Gendry arrived, flanked by 2 Stormlander men-at-arms, snow still melting on their cloaks. Robin Arryn lingered near a column, fiddling with the snowy falcon pinned at his throat. Jon entered in his leathers, throat still raw from furnace air. All conversation fell silent. Sansa lifted a single brow. "We must speak plainly. Ravens from White Harbor reached us before dawn. Daenerys Targaryen landed on Dragonstone 3 days past, and flies patrols each dawn and dusk. The fishermen count not 1 dragon but 5. A murmur rippled. Gendry scowled. 5? Gods preserve us. Then, Robin's young face paled. The Maester of the Eyrie says the Val's stores are strong. We can shelter, but not from dragons. Brienne's gauntlet tightened on sword hilt. Stone melts under dragon flame. The Eyrie will not stand if she chooses to burn. Jon leaned over the map, palm braced near the painted wolf's wood. Drogon's new brood are young, he said, voice low. They may ride the thermals but cannot yet lay waste to castles. She trains them. Maester Walken's quill scratched quick. If so, it will take months, perhaps years, before they match Drogon's ferocity. Or weeks, Sansa countered. If the mother dragon hunts with them, shows them how to kill. Robin swallowed. We should send tribute. Gold, grain. Swear fealty anew. Gendry's fist thumped the plank. Storms end bows to no fire now. Our people still smell the ashes of King's Landing when the wind turns east. Yet your small folk do not want to burn again, Sansa said gently. Jon studied the unsettled faces. This was Westeros' wound, fear layered upon fear, each memory of flame reopening the old. He cleared his throat. We must reach Daenerys before fear becomes prophecy. She came to Winterfell without destruction once. She can again. Gendry's jaw set. And if she will not, if she demands the North kneel and the Vale follow. Jon forced himself to answer the only truth he knew. Then the North will defend itself. But first give me leave to speak with her. Robin raised blue eyes bright with a desperate hope. You'll go south. South draws nearer every hour. Jon gestured to the map. Dight. She holds Dragonstone. I'll sail from White Harbor in 3 days under truce. Alone, save for Ghost. He paused, breath steady though his heart hammered. And one of my hatchlings. The room erupted, voices overlapping. Outrage and disbelief alike. You'd reveal them already. Shall see it as challenge. Jon, think what you... Enough! Sansa's sharp cry cut through. Silence returned like a slammed window. She regarded Jon, long, measuring. You mean to show her you share the burden? She said at last. Jon inclined his head. To show we can keep each other's dragons in check. Balance. Gendry exhaled between clenched teeth. A bold gamble. The last time balance was attempted between Targaryens, they danced themselves into ruin. And yet, their children lived to rebuild. Jon replied. Perhaps we can rebuild before ruin. Brienne's blue eyes softened. Which hatchling will you bring? Jon thought of their temperaments. Scanir was bold, but prone to spark at sudden noises. Oryx curious but flighty. Varen, a coil of emerald cunning, the calmest under Ghost's watch. Varen, he answered. He's the surest flyer. Not a breath stirred for 7 heartbeats. Finally Sansa nodded, though worry lined her brow. Then I grant you leave, Lord Snow. She turned to Gendry, Robin, and the others. But prepare our defenses all the same. Jon returned her gaze, silent gratitude passing between them. He felt the eyes of every counselor, every guard along the walls, heavy upon his back as he left. They saw Stark, a Targaryen, and a man who might soon be cinder on the wind. He felt only the restless beat of dragon wings whispering possibility through his veins. Preparation consumed the next 3 days. White Harbor's docks buzzed with measured urgency, longshoremen loading casks of salt pork, wheat, candles, dried lingcod. Lady Manderly furnished Jon a sleek black galley called the Silver Seagull, oars flanked by carved prow wings painted cobalt. The sight of those wings stirred Varen when Jon brought the hatchling aboard, wrapped in thick canvases. Sailors flinched at the writhing bundle, whispers spread. But Jon spoke calmly to Varen in Valyrian. Crooning old lullabies Maester Aemon once muttered in his sleep. Percy's Nogger! Flame for us! The hatchling quieted, curling around Jon's wrist like a living torque. Eyes half-lidded. Ghost trotted the deck, nose lifted to briny winds. Seabirds wheeled overhead, screeching as though gossiping of strange smells. Wolf, man, and dragon mingle. At sunset, Sansa arrived with a small guard. She pressed into Jon's hands a roll of parchment bearing her seal. Her pledge that the North pursued peace first, underwritten by Storm's End and the Eyrie. She said, "Take care when giving this to her. Words are tender in the wrong breeze." She wished him safe return, but her embrace lingered long enough to reveal the fear she could not voice. Jon promised he would not let the sky burn. She stepped away, tears glimmering though none fell. Aria appeared from the shadow of a mast, arms folded. "If you die, I'll kill you," she muttered, the old threat that had once made them laugh beside Winterfell's archery butts. He smiled anyway, because memory was the balm she offered. She kissed Ghost's snout, then vanished like mist. Horns sounded. The silver seagull slipped from the quay on a rising tide, oars dipping in perfect cadence. Jon stood at the aft rail, Varen coiled beneath his cloak. Ghost pressed to his flank. As White Harbor's lighthouse shrank behind, a gull screamed overhead, its wings limned gold by the last shred of sun. Jon watched that flare of light until it blinked out against the open sea, and he knew a cruel truth. In another dawn or two, the only brilliance in the world might be dragonfire. Dragonstone rose from the mists like a dread beast's spine. Towers jagged, cliffs veined black-red. Basalt ramparts bristled with fresh scorpion bolts, enough to make any sailor's heart lurch, though they would do little against Drogon's hide. Jon's ship approached under a flag of white. The sea lay mirror calm, gulls silent, as if cowed by realms of smoke curling from the mountain's throat. Dawn painted the stone pink, but no warmth touched the air. A battered Drummond hull, patched and scarred, rode toward them with unsullied standing, rigid at the bow. Spears raised but shafts unknocked. Jon stepped to the gunwale as the boats closed. He carried no sword on his hip, only the satchel that held Varen. The hatchling shifted restlessly within. Sensing kin near, emitting a faint chirrup that made sailors' eyes widen. A plank bridged the gap. Grey Worm himself strode across, immaculate in new black leathers, helm tucked beneath one arm. His brown eyes measured Jon a full breath. "You come alone?" he asked in the common tongue, accent unchanged by years. "And unarmed," Jon replied. Grey Worm's gaze flicked to Ghost. "Direwolf is not weapon. Only if you strike first." Ghost's ears flattened. He understood enough. Grey Worm's lips tightened, but he gestured to the plank. "The Queen will grant audience." Jon crossed decks. The Unsullied watched every movement with predator stillness. He sensed scorn in their posture, a memory of Meereen's red sand and whipping posts. Yet none stepped forward. The Drummond turned, oars carving the water toward the fortress harbor cut beneath the Dragonmont. Sea surged against lava rock. Gulls cried again as if relief seeped into their throats. Varen shifted, tail lashing inside the satchel. Jon unslung it, whispering, "Soon, little one." Dragonstone's sulphurous air excited the hatchling. This island hummed with old magic. They disembarked at a jetty built wide enough for war elephants. Steps carved into the cliff wound upward. Jon climbed beside Grey Worm, Ghost pacing silent. Flames guttered within stone basins, casting wavering fans of light along the rough walls. At the top, two great doors stood, wrought of black iron in the shape of coiling dragons. Grey Worm pushed one open. The hall of Dragonstone swallowed them whole. Its vaulted ceiling arched like the ribs of some enormous beast, pillars carved to resemble serpents twisting skyward. Braziers burned low, leaving corners in gloom. At the far end, Daenerys waited upon a dais of volcanic glass. Drogon rested behind her, wings folded, but his molten eyes tracked each footstep. Beside the queen stood Missandei, alive. Jon realized with a start. Last he knew, Cersei's blade had claimed her on the walls of King's Landing. Yet here she stood, hair cropped short, gaze guarded but bright. Perhaps Daenerys dragons were not the only lives she had resurrected from despair. Jon halted halfway down the hall. Ghost stopped by his knee, hackles bristling beneath candle glow. Daenerys' silver hair fell in loose waves over a jacket the color of night water. A single ruby clasp pinned her collar. The silence between them rang louder than battle drums. Finally, she spoke. "You bring a wolf and a secret. Show me." Jon exhaled, lifted the satchel, and loosened the drawstring. Varen coiled out, head darting, wings unfurling in a rustle of thin membrane. The emerald dragonling hissed once, scenting the vastness of the chamber, then fixed bright sapphire eyes upon Daenerys. Drogon growled low. Heat rippled beneath his ebony scales. Varen spread wings, matching defiance for defiance, though dwarfed 100-fold. Daenerys rose, approach measured. Missandei stayed above the dais. Grey worm's spear angled subtly. Jon's pulse pounded. He placed Varen upon his forearm, supporting the slender body so the baby dragon faced the mother of dragons. "A gift?" she asked softly. "A promise," Jon said, "that I do not come to challenge but to share the burden." She circled him, gaze flicking from Varen to Ghost, to Jon's unarmored chest. "You leave your other two in Winterfell? For now. They will grow beyond hiding soon. Ace will yours." Daenerys halted before him, no more than a hand's breadth separating them. Their breaths mingled like ice and ember. "I felt them hatch," she whispered. "Tiny sparks in my heart after so much ash. I thought at first I was mad." "You are not mad," he whispered back. She laughed. A small brittle sound. "Half the world thinks otherwise. They see only a butcher queen. And a wonder. They are wrong." She lifted tear-bright eyes. "Are you here to admit it?" "I'm here to atone." Jon swallowed. "I chose fear over faith when you plunged a dagger through my heart." Her fingers rose to touch where the scar would lie beneath cloth. "I survived fire unscathed, yet steel from the man I loved nearly killed me." He flinched. "I died once too after faith failed me. I cannot undo either wound. But perhaps dragons can heal what steel breaks." Her gaze softened. Pain flickered, followed by wary hope. She glanced at Varen. "He is beautiful. His name is Varen. Spring, in the old tongue." "Spring?" She brushed a fingertip along the hatchling's snout. Varen sniffed, then licked her skin with a forked tongue hot as a burning coal. Tears spilled from her lashes. "I thought no one would ever trust me with new life again." Jon's chest constricted. "Trust me, and you trust the North. We will safeguard these young yours and mine. We will teach them restraint." She shook her head slowly. "Dragons were made for conquest, and men were made for death." He stepped closer. "Or can we choose?" The hall held its breath. Drogon rose behind her, looming. Ghost planted claws, white lips curling in silent snarl. The two great beasts regarded one another across the flagstones, ice and fire face to face. Jon whispered a plea in Valyrian. "Lycra. Calm." Drogon's nostrils flared. The hall trembled. Varen chirped, unafraid. Then Drogon folded wings again, settling. Ghost eased. Daenerys exhaled. Perhaps the world is tired of war. Yet above weary heads, crowns still gleam. If I lay mine down, another tyrant will grasp it. Then break the wheel, as you once vowed," Jon said. "Not by crushing, but by guiding. Be queen in name, but let the realm govern itself through councils of every kingdom. Let dragons defend only from threats beyond our shores. White walkers, slavers, invaders." Daenerys' eyes widened. "You speak of a protectorate, not a monarchy." "A protectorate of fire tempered by ice," he said. "Sworn to guard, not rule." She turned away, pacing across the mosaic of Valyrian glyphs. Jon watched the ripple of thoughts through her shoulders. Muscle, memory, hope, fear. Behind her, Missandei's smile flickered like a dawn ray through storm clouds. The Endi woman caught Jon's eye and dipped her chin, as though urging him on. Daenerys stopped before the carved map table, fingers brushing the petrified rivers. "When I first stepped upon this stone, I believed the world to be mine by birth. I traced armies with candle wax, charted flight paths like spears. She looked over her shoulder. Is it weakness to want instead to shepherd? It's wisdom, Jon said. She faced him fully. Then we will need laws no dragon can break. He dared a step closer, until the gulf of memory could be crossed by a whisper. We'll write them together. Her lips parted, but words died as a tremor rippled through the hall, stone shuddering as if from deep thunder. Drogon's head snapped up. Varen screeched, wings beating. Ghost growled, hackles rippling like winter wheat. Grey Worm set spear-tip to floor. A deafening crack split the air. Above the high windows, nightfall's blue glow turned orange, then white. Jon rushed to an arrow slit. The sky beyond Dragonstone's battlements burned. No gentle sunset, but a pillar of fire lancing upward from the sea, climbing higher every second. He felt heat through thick stone. A roar followed, louder than any wave, vibrating marrow. Wildfire, he muttered. Daenerys joined him. The narrow sea cannot burn so, she whispered. Her eyes tracked distant shapes, ships afire, masts melting. Dragons? No. Shadows too stout, too many. Grey Worm appeared at her side, voice taut. Queen. Scouts. Signal a fleet. Lannister banners. Painted lions on gold sails. Jon's blood chilled. Cersei is dead. Her forces shattered. Daenerys' expression hardened. Aegon Rivers. She spat the name like poison. The Golden Company's last commander. He swore to avenge their contracts. It seems he has found Wildfire caches. He means to slay dragons while they sleep. Jon looked again. Indeed. Green fire surged now amid the orange. Wildfire. Ships detonated like sickly stars, each concussion rippling the water. The blaze advanced toward Dragonstone on a storm-driven tide, painting black waves in eerie emerald. Daenerys whipped around, cloak swirling. Grey Worm, ready the Unsullied along the western wall. Missandei, have the healers prepare for burned sailors. Jon, her voice faltered only a blink. Come with me. Come with me. They ran. The hall's basalt floor thrummed as Drogon lumbered after, giant talons striking sparks. Outside, smoke carried the stench of roasted tar and scorched oak. Jon held Varen secure against his chest. The hatchling wriggled, desperate to fly. Not yet, he hissed. Ghost sprinted beside them, paws slipping on polished stone. They emerged onto the wind-carved terrace where Daenerys' old war council once convened. A spray of embers drifted like violet fireflies. Drogon lumbered to the terrace's edge and leapt skyward, wings beating hurricane gusts. Daenerys ran toward the dragon's back, but before she could mount, a ballista bolt whistled through the gloom and slammed into the parapet, shattering stone. Shards whirled. Ghost yelped. Jon flung his body over Varen. A shard slashed his shoulder, blood spattering the satchel. Drogon roared at the sight, banking back. Daenerys turned, eyes blazing fury. Get to safety. Jon pushed to his feet, pain blooming. We fight together. She hesitated, then nodded once. Then take to the sky. He loosed Varen at last. The emerald dragon burst upward, wings thrumming, jubilation and rage entwined in one primal scream. The hatchling was barely the size of a large dog, but in torchlight he looked every inch a king, eyes reflecting the sea of green fire below. Drogon swept beneath, catching Varen's updraft. The tiny dragon locked into formation like a gosling shadowing a swan. Jon mounted behind Daenerys with practiced ease, memories of his brief time astride Rhaegal returning in a rush. Drogon accepted his weight, though the great muscles tremored with battle fever. Daenerys glanced back. For a moment the years of distrust vanished. She reached, clasped his hand. Together they rose. Sea spray hissed up the cliffs as wildfire fueled by traitor winds reached Dragonstone's breakwater. Ships caught by the tide exploded, showering blackened planks. On the largest burning vessel, where the lion banner still fluttered in threads, Jon glimpsed a man armored in crimson scale, his raised sword reflecting green conflagration. Aegon Rivers, bastard of Lys, nephew to the Golden Company's slain commander, bellowed something lost to roaring flames. Drogon banked toward the threat, Varen darting alongside. Jon pressed one arm tight around Daenerys' waist, the other gripping a thorn-like spine. Wind shrieked past. Crossbows twanged. Iron quarrels rattled useless against Drogon's iron-dark hide. One bolt clipped Varen. The hatchling shrieked, but the wound was shallow. Daenerys' hair whipped like a white banner as she cried a single Valyrian word Jon knew well. Dracarys. Drogon's throat ignited. A torrent of red-gold flame burst forth, incandescent arcs lashing the pirate flagship. Wildfire answered in unnatural green. The two infernos collided mid-air, showering molten glass-like drops that sizzled where they landed. The deck buckled. Sailors leapt screaming into the water that boiled on contact. Drogon banked again, but a second ballista bolt soared upward, fired from a smaller sloop hidden in smoke. The bolt struck his left wing where membrane met bone. Drogon roared, listing. Jon's stomach lurched as their altitude dipped. Daenerys clung to a spinal ridge, shouting encouragement in the high tongue. Jon scanned the churning sea. Varen darted zigzag, avoiding arrows, small size his salvation. "Let me go," Jon shouted over the wind. She shook her head violently. "No. I'll mount Varen." He pointed as the hatchling swooped. Two dragons divide their aim. "He's too small." Her voice cracked. "I trust him." Jon released the spine and moved along Drogon's back until wind threatened to tear him away. He leapt. Varen, sensing the intent through their bond, streak under Jon. He landed with a bone-jarring thud, arms locking round the hatchling's neck. Varen's body strained under the weight, but held. Together they climbed, tiny wings beating in furious rhythm. The sea rushed beneath like a dark memory. Jon leaned forward, murmuring. Varen responded, wheeling toward the ballista ship. Sailors gaped up. Some laughed, thinking to see man and lizardling dash upon their mast. They did not laugh long. No great gout of flame came. Varen was yet too young, but a torrent of churning smoke and sparks poured from his throat. Tar-soaked rigging caught fire where the sparks landed, greedy tongues racing along lines. Jon guided the dive, using weight and momentum more than true flight power. They slammed onto the forecastle. Varen's claws dug deep, and Jon leapt again, rolling across the deck. Sailors rushed him, cutlasses raised. Ghost's howl cut the sky as the direwolf launched from Drogon's trail, landing atop the first attacker in a spray of red. Jon drew the only blade he carried hidden, a slender dragon-glass dagger. He parried a clumsy stroke, drove the knife through lamellar gaps. The man collapsed. Varen took wing again, smashing his tail through ballista gears, sending the weapon clattering apart. Drogon swooped overhead, the torn wing still functional. Daenerys unleashed another inferno onto the flagship. Masts toppled. Aegon Rivers bellowed curses, swung a grappling harpoon in futile rage. Jon fought side by side with Ghost, the deck tilting as fire consumed the port rail. One man slashed the wolf's flank. Ghost yelped, but sank fangs through the sailor's throat before retreating, white fur slick with blood. Jon kicked another overboard. Flames spread. The ballista ship became a funeral pyre. Timbers moaned. Jon whistled. Varen descended low. Jon climbed astride once more, Ghost clamping jaws around his bootstrap, climbing also, furry limbs grasping scaled hide until the hatchling beat upward with heavy effort. Behind them, the ship's magazine detonated. A column of green-tinged fire raced skyward, sinking Varen's tail. Jon felt the burn through their bond. It was pain, but also fierce exhilaration. His dragon had tasted battle and survived. They rose to Drogon's side. Daenerys shouted something, praise or warning. Jon pointed to the remains of the flagship now cracking apart. Aegon Rivers still stood on the bow, cloak ablaze, face lit phosphorescent by wildfire. He screamed a curse into the heavens as Drogon wheeled back. But the Queen's eyes found Jon instead, in flames that devoured a fleet. She saw him alive, astride the smallest dragon in the world, wolf companion at his heels. Tears streamed down her cheeks to vanish in the wind. Drogon bathed the flagship one final time. Iron nails melted. Aegon rivers disappeared in a blast that turned sea and sky into a single roaring wound. Then silence fell, broken only by the hiss of steam and distant cries of wounded sailors in the surf. The sun pierced the smoke, beams striking Jon and Daenerys until they hovered gilded in the light, like twin gods painted upon sept ceilings. Varen banked close to Drogon. The larger dragon stretched a claw as if to shield the hatchling. Around them, the last of the Golden Company's renegades fled into a graveyard of burning debris. Daenerys guided Drogon into a glide toward Dragonstone's battlements. Jon followed. Ghost clung tightly, fur singed, eyes shining. Varen's wings trembled some under strain but held strong. When they touched down upon the terrace again, Unsullied rushed forward, faces awed. Jon slid off Varen's back, legs unsteady. He knelt and checked Ghost's wound, a long gash, but not deep. He whispered praise, pressing cloth torn from his sleeve to stanch blood. Varen collapsed beside, panting, tongue flickering. Jon stroked green scales until tremor eased. Daenerys dismounted Drogon. Before any words, she strode straight to Varen. She inspected the scrape on his tail, murmured soft Valyrian comfort. The hatchling chirruped, nuzzling her hand. When she lifted her gaze to Jon, heat and smoke swirled in her eyes, but also dawning respect. "You trusted him, and he did not fail," she said. "We trusted each other," Jon replied hoarsely. Grey Worm approached, helmet under arm, eyes flicking wariness between man and queen. But he said only, "The harbor is secure. Fires drift out with the tide." Missandei stepped beside him, tears shining. "No lives lost within the fortress. Some injured sailors rescued. We will tend." Daenerys nodded. Her gaze never left Jon. "Your protectorate," she said slowly. "Perhaps it can be." Jon felt his knees threaten collapse from exhaustion, but hope steadied him. He looked upon sea still boiling in places, upon burning wrecks. Even protecting, dragons wrought terror. Yet they had saved more than they destroyed today. That balance must be sharpened until it stood unbreakable. "We will make it so," he vowed. Within the hour, Varen rested in a heated chamber beneath the keep, healers dressing his tail. Drogon dozed weary but triumphant outside on black sand, wings stretching like sails to catch waning warmth. Jon sat beside Daenerys in a small solar that overlooked the crimson water. They shared a flagon of honeyed wine. Ghosts slept at their feet. Quiet settled, the hush after storm. Fragile but real. They spoke of new laws, representation from every kingdom, oaths dragons would uphold. Maester Walken would draft protocols with the Citadel for handling wildfire stockpiles. Missandei would pen charters translating rights into a dozen tongues. Grey Worm would oversee a joint guard where Unsullied served beside northern spears. Night thickened, constellations blinking to life. The one called the Stallion's Mane glittered above Dragonstone's smoking chimneys. Jon traced its outline on the glass. "Tomorrow the realm will hear of this battle," he whispered. "Songs already form in sailors' throats." "Then let them sing of unity," Daenerys replied, resting her hand over his scarred one. Fire met ice again, but this time the touch did not wound. It tempered. He closed weary eyes. In darkness he felt Varen slumbering deep below. Heartbeat slow and strong. He felt Scanir and Oric far away in Winterfell's hot vault, stirring as if to some distant dream of sparks across black waves. He felt Drogon's mighty presence outside, ancient sorrow tempered by new purpose. And beyond all dragons, beyond flesh and flame, he felt an emerging path where the old wheel creaked, its spokes loosening under the hammer of change. "Balance," Bran had said. "Life for life." Perhaps they had taken the first breath toward it. Morning's first blush found Jon standing on a balcony above Dragonstone's causeway. Daenerys slept within, exhausted but unbroken. The sea steamed faintly where embers cooled. Varen perched upon the parapet to his right, already eager for the thermals of dawn, wounds bound in linen salved with myrrh and honey. Ghost leaned against Jon's leg, muzzle lifted to catch the scents of salt and dragon smoke. Below, small folk from the fishing hamlets along Blackwater Bay approached in skiffs bearing nets of crabs and baskets of oysters, gifts of gratitude, if rumor spoke true. Tower bells tolled faint. Somewhere in the kitchens, cook fires hissed. Jon breathed deep. He thought of Sansa in Winterfell, of Aria sharpening dull practice swords for children now fatherless, of Bran gazing not at the present, but every thread of possibility. He thought of Robb and Rickon, of his father's quiet honor, of Ygritte's wild laughter in caves of steam. All paths that had led him here. Man of Night's Watch, traitor king, kinslayer lover. Now rider of a dragon, no taller than a pony but fierce as sunrise. He had fought too many wars to not fear another. Yet for the first time since he felt a sword in his hand, he truly believed peace might be carved instead of flesh. If the world dared to believe with him. Verin unfurled wings and shrieked at the pinking east. Drogon responded in deep baritone from his perch on the cliff. Their voices wove, young and ancient, promise and reminder. Ghost howled, the sound threading between. Jon smiled despite the ache of bruises blooming beneath jerkin. He placed a hand on Verin's flank. Easy, little brother. Plenty of sky ahead. The sun crested. Light speared through ragged clouds, igniting the sea into molten gold. Dragons rose to meet it. Drogon first, enormous silhouette carving shadows. Verin next, emerald flame flickering along his tail. Behind, from mews carved into the mountain, the three younglings of Drogon's brood took tentative wing, squealing with wonder. 5 dragons moved as one, arcsy of living ruby, jade and obsidian weaving patterns across the dawn. Jon watched, breath caught, until tears blurred the brilliance. He whispered a vow to the rising day. Never again for conquest, only for guardianship. Let the winds bear that promise to Winterfell, to the Vale's icy cliffs, to the lemon groves of Dorne, and the green fields where children once fled from ash. A new age had begun, not forged in iron thrones or shattered walls, but in the fragile miracle of 5 dragons whose hearts beat in unison with those of 2 wounded, unbroken souls. And such miracles, once born, had a way of daring the world to change around them. Wind whipped the parapets of Dragonstone in lashing sheets of brine and sleet, the storm's fury turning dawn light into a swirling haze of pearl gray. Jon Snow stood on the terrace where the night before dragons had launched into war. His cloak was soaked, hair matted against his brow, but the chill could not blunt the heat thrumming in his veins. Verin, bandaged tail tucked beneath jade wings, clung to a column's lee, eyes slitted with displeasure at the weather. Ghost, half-healed, paced beside Jon, paws splashing through rain puddles that steamed where stray cinders still smoldered. Below, Dragonstone's harbor churned with the aftermath of battle. Burned spars bobbed like charred bones. Sailors in skiffs hooked debris from oily swells. Unsullied patrols in rain-dark armor lined rebuilt palisades, shields glistening. The sea smelled of pitch, salt, and dragonfire-quenched steam. A bitter perfume of both victory and warning. Jon breathed the scent deeply. Each inhale carried fragments of memory. The sickly green pillar of Wildfire, Daenerys' white hair whipping before him, Verin's triumphant shriek when ballista gears shattered. The realm would hear of that skyborn duel soon. Bards were likely tuning harps already, gilding truth into myth. Yet myth or not, change had begun. A protectorate of fire tempered by ice, words spoken under desperate duress, now had to be forged in calmer flames. He turned as heavy footfalls echoed beyond the arch. Daenerys entered, rain beating her shoulders. Silver hair pinned beneath a simple bone clasp. She wore riding leathers and a half-cape, the deep violet of dusk clouds. No crown glittered upon her brow. No jewels weighed her throat. Only Drogon's scale, polished and fashioned into a torque, lay against her collarbone. A silent testament to both power and loss. Their eyes met. Yesterday's anger had cooled into something keener than steel, purpose shared by two who had once believed fate pitted them against each other. She approached Varen first, stroking his flank. The hatchling chirruped, then snapped irritably at the sky as thunder boomed. "He hates storms," Daenerys said, half smiling. "He's of the north," Jon answered. "We learn to snarl at what we can't chase away." She quirked one brow. "And do you?" "Only when I forget my duty." She brushed damp hair from her cheek, gaze distant. "Duty lies heavy this morning. Lords flush with fear will soon gather at Storm's End. They demand answers. Why dragons burn warships? Why a queen who once scorched a city now claims restraint? Bender." Jon stepped beside her. "Then we give them answers. Not excuses, not threats. Truth." Daenerys' fingers tightened on the scaled torque. Storm's End was promised to Gendry. He stands our ally. But his bannermen remember burnt fields at the Blackwater. They feel small beneath wings. Bring wings smaller. Jon gestured to Varen. "Let them see growth, not havoc." A hatchling bound to an oath. Her smile flickered. "And Drogon? Let the great dragon circle high. Let lords feel his shadow without tasting his fire. They'll remember he protects, not punishes." She watched Jon, a heartbeat, searching. "You speak of balance, as if the word were prayer. It is. One we must recite until habit carves it into the realm." Footsteps approached. Missandei, in a rain cloak of woven blue, scroll case clutched to her chest. "My queen, Lord Stark." Ravens perch restless. They arrived from Winterfell, River Run, Highgarden, even Sunspear. "All answer your summons to a grand moot." "Moot," Jon echoed. "A northern word." Missandei inclined her head. "She asked me find a term not tainted by histories of courts and small councils." "A gathering of equals," she said. Daenerys accepted the scroll case. Wax seals of many houses glowed crimson in lamplight. She tucked it beneath her arm, then faced the sea. "They will come to Storm's End in 3 weeks' time. We must travel at once and arrive first, to place peace upon those battlements before suspicion claims them." 3 weeks, Jon mused. Enough for Scanir and Oryx to reach their second molt. He pictured the vault at Winterfell. Smiths stoking furnaces, dragons stretching against chains that were more symbolic than binding. "I'll send for them. All 3 dragons must stand witness beside Drogon's brood." Lightning forked across the horizon, momentarily etching Daenerys' profile in silver. 5 dragons upon Storm's End. She breathed. 7, corrected a voice behind. They turned. Bran Stark emerged, pushed in his chair by Podrick Payne. Rainwebs clung to the folds of his wool cloak. Ravens flapped from merlons above, cawing like restless prophets. Bran's dark gaze held the storm's reflections and something older, deeper. 7 dragons, he repeated. 3 hatched beneath Winterfell's crypt. 3 sired by Drogon on Volantene shores. And 1 more yet unborn, quickening within an egg still lost. Jon stepped forward, heart tightening. What egg? A pearl-black shell veined with gold, sunk into the Dothraki sea when old Valyria still breathed smoke. The wind tonight whispers that horse lords bring it westward, believing it omen of a cow who will ride burning wind. Then, Daenerys' breath caught. Memories of Drogo flickered across her eyes. If that egg hatches to war. It will, Bran said simply. Unless United Flame teaches it peace. Silence hung heavy. Rain hammered slate. Ghosts circled Bran's chair, sniffing. So the moot grows larger, Jon murmured. Not only lords but dragons unborn. Daenerys exhaled, resolve crystallizing. Then we must not fail. Preparations unfolded like weaving threads across the canvas of Westeros. Missandei penned charters outlining the moot. Every great and lesser lord invited, each to speak without fear of dragonfire. Grey Worm drilled unsullied to act as impartial guardians, not conquerors. Ravens winged north with Jon's command. Gendry to escort Sansa, Aria, and the hatchlings. Lord Robin to bring Eyrie archers versed in signaling rather than slaying. Tarly levies to provide grain, not spears, so Storm's End stores swelled enough to feed an army that would never march. Within Dragonstone's cavernous interior, Daenerys walked flame-lit tunnels, where Valyrian glyphs pulsed like buried embers. By night, she and Jon studied each rune, tracing syllables older than conquest. Kaivar, guide, not rule. Velza, shield, not sword. Ancient dragonlords had words for guardianship too. They simply chose conquest instead. Together, the pair vowed they would not. Every dawn Drogon soared with his brood over the Blackwater, teaching dive, bank, and thermal rise. Jon joined on Varen, muscles bruised by riding a half-grown beast who fought both gravity and exuberance. Sometimes Daenerys laughed at his ungainly slides along emerald scales. Sometimes she barked stern commands in Valyrian. Always their dragons answered, weaving trails of steam that glittered rosy in the morning sun. On the 8th day, a shadow crawled up the stair behind Jon as he dismounted. Aria stepped from it, gray cloak dripping seawater. She had sailed a fast longship around Cape Wrath. Scanner perched atop the mast, Oryx clinging to a cask of hardtack. Now the two northern hatchlings scuttled across Dragonstone's courtyard, sniffing volcanic sand. Scanner hissed his greeting to Varen, tails entangled, wings fluttered in joyous reunion. Oryx bolted beneath Drogon's folded wing, chirping, until the elder lifted a protective claw. Aria ruffled Skinner's crest. Smirking, he bit a sailor who tried to feed him raw cod. Won't eat fish, your dragon. Has more Stark than Targaryen. Her smile faded as she studied Jon. Storm's End calls. The moot will be peace or pyre. Thought you'd need extra shadow. He clasped her shoulder, grateful. Peace, sister. Those shadows walk with us. Then? She nodded toward Bran, who rolled across the yard between Podrick and Sam. Arrived that morning from Old Town with hidden manuscripts on dragon physiology. Bran's face was unreadable, but his ravens swarmed overhead in agitated vortex. Lightning again flickered beyond clouds thick as forge smoke. More storms, Arya muttered. More balance, Bran corrected quietly. Storms break heat, lest flame devour sky. The fleet departed under a banner no one had seen before. Crimson direwolf entwined with silver dragon, ringed by a crown broken into open hands. Sails bellied under wind that smelled of wet stone and distant flowering heather. Drogon and his brood wheeled above the masts. Varen, Scanner, and Oryx flew lower, hardly bigger than boars now, but swift. Small folk along the shore at Crackclaw Point stared open-mouthed, then bent knees not in fear but reverence. Some threw flowers into waves, murmuring prayers to gods new and old alike. When at last Storm's End's thunder-colored walls loomed, crackling with sea spray, Jon felt history flex. In those towers Stannis had brooded upon shadow. Robert had drunk away grief, and Renly had dreamt of easy crowns. Now new dreams would anchor in their stone. Gendry met them on the beach beneath the castle's looming drum, keep. He wore blacksmith's apron over lordly surcoat, hands still stained with forged soot. He had ordered ballistae melted into plowshares, a statement none could ignore. Beside him stood Sansa, cloak of pale gray fox trimmed in snowmelt pearls. Her eyes found Jon, then drifted to Daenerys, lingering. Whatever doubt once burned, there had cooled into tempered steel of acceptance. She dipped her chin with courtly grace. Lords arrived in procession, Edmure Tully with River Run banners newly resewn. Yon Royce clad in veil bronze, stamping cold feet. Lady Asha Greyjoy flanked by shield maidens, her laughter echoing off wet battlements. A Tyrell cousin bearing a single golden rose, signifying regrowth of a house thought dead. Even Dornish envoys, pale scarves fluttering in sea wind. They came wary but hopeful. Storm's End's great hall, round as the keep itself, roared with voices as moot was called to order. Torches flickered in sconces shaped like breaking waves. At center, a circle of basalt remained bare, until Daenerys and Jon stepped forward. Behind them, scaled heads peered through arches carved specifically for dragons' necks. Drogon's massive visage framed by 5 fledglings whose wings quivered in half-folded readiness. The lords murmured, fear, awe, wonder tumbling together. Daenerys raised one gloved hand. Silence rippled outward. Rain pounded the roof yet could not drown her voice. She spoke not of thrones or claims. She spoke of fire, born to her in exile, and once misused. She named the ashes of King's Landing, her sin and sorrow. She pointed to melted ballistae recast as plowshares, vowed dragons would till peace, not reap terror. Jon spoke next, words plain and northern. He told of ice and death, of how he had knelt in snow and watched blue flame ravage the living. He told how dragonfire sealed that wound only when guided by a heart willing to sacrifice crown for breath. He laid Longclaw on the basalt ring, its Valyrian steel gleaming. This sword saved my life, he said. But a sword is only a tool. It can defend, or it can destroy. We choose. He slid the blade away, leaving the stone bare between them. Gendry stepped forward bearing a hammer freshly forged from the flagship's wrecked anchor, half wrapped in green leather. He struck the basalt once, clang ringing, then laid the hammer beside where Longclaw had rested. Tools tempered from ruin, he pronounced. Other lords approached, each offering emblem of past wrong turned future right. A veil shield crushed at the airy redone into grain scoop. A Tully sword broken at the twins reforged into pruning blade. Dornish spear tips melted into chalice. They placed them in a widening circle, until the basalt resembled wheel spokes pointing not outward to conquest, but inward to union. Sansa stepped into the ring last, carrying a small chest of polished weirwood. The north has known the bite of winter and the burn of dragons, she said. We choose neither. We choose spring. She opened the chest, revealing seeds, barley, flax, and blue winter roses. She scattered them across the basalt. Grain nestled against hammered iron, life among ruin. Bran's voice rose though he had not moved from his chair. A wheel may break, but seed grows. Let this day root deeper than memory. A hush followed, in which only rain and distant ocean answered. Then, tentatively, a lord of the Westerlands stepped forward, one hand trembling as he removed lion brooch, symbol of pride undone. He laid it among seeds. A Tyrell cousin added golden petals. One by one they offered tokens, until the circle brimmed with pieces of every heritage. Daenerys knelt, palms pressed to stones slick with drizzle. Jon knelt opposite. Between them sprouts of peace took intangible root. The moot's first day closed not with cheers, but with collective exhale, as if the realm had held breath since Dragon's first blackened field of fire, and now, centuries later, dared release it. Yet dusk carried darker tidings on wind that howled through needle slits. Aria's swift shadow stalked parapets when she spotted sails beyond cape. No banners flew, only tattered gray. She alerted Jon, who called unsullied scouts. By moonrise they dragged a half-delirious sailor from surf, flesh blistered by unseen venom. He babbled of a warlock ship from Qarth, of shadowbinding intent on stealing dragon hatchlings to harness their fire. His tongue turned black before he could utter more. Daenerys' eyes reflected storm lanterns when she heard. Warlocks again. She recalled the house of the undying, the leashes they had tried to fasten. Rage smoldered. Jon placed a hand on her arm. We protect without vengeance. She nodded though flame licked her gaze. That night, Bran summoned Jon to a tower chamber. Ravens lined the rafters like constellations of night ink. Bran's fingers rested on weirwood carved armrests. The warlocks serve not alone, he intoned. The lost egg stirs them. They seek to birth a dragon fed on stolen flame, bound by sorcery older than Valyria. Jon stiffened. Can we stop them? Yes, but only united. The moot must seal its pact before that hatchling awakens, else our new peace will crack like eggshell beneath dark oils. Jon left with dread coiling his gut like winter ice. Second day of the moot dawned crisp. Rain cleansed. Lords debated frameworks, rotating councils, grain levies, shoreline patrols to combat slavers. Sansa and Missandei co-scribed articles. 1 seat per kingdom. Dragon riders sworn to abstain from domestic conflict. standing court of maesters and septons to arbitrate. Arguments flared, Dornish envoys demanded autonomy. Ironborn insisted on raiding rights curtailed not erased. Yet each time voices rose toward fracture. Drogon's brood screeched overhead, reminding them fire listened. At midday, a horn sounded. 3 pulses, unfamiliar. Gendry strode in, face tight. Ships sighted, Quarth galleasses under black sails. The hall erupted. Lords clamored for arrows and storm catapults. Daenerys rose swiftly. "No, I will parley." Jon echoed, "With me." Arya slipped from shadow. "And me." Bran's voice carried calm. "Go." But no shadows favor neither moon nor sun. They prey on both. Ghost trotted after Jon, claws clicking. They mounted ramparts as galleasses anchored beyond surging shoals. Longboat approached, pale lanterns casting sick aquamarine glow. Figures within wore robes of cobalt, embroidered with silver eyes. Winds tugged their cowls to reveal shaved heads, skin stained blue from warlock elixir. Kinami mouth zombie. At prow stood a woman tall and willow slim, hair like midnight silk. Irises milky white. Jon's breath frosted. He recognized warlock craft. Visions haunting Cortha's devastated halls. The longboat beached upon black shingle. Warlocks stepped, bare feet sinking. The woman raised porcelain hands. Her voice floated like echo in ice cavern. Mother of dragons, slayer of chains, breaker of breath. We return a gift once stolen. She produced from folds an egg gleaming with oily black sheen crisscrossed by molten gold veins. Heat warped rain mist around it. Jon felt Varen's talons tighten on his shoulder. Every dragon on the rampart snarled as one. Daenerys descended steps, cloak rippling. That egg was forged when Valyrian still named storms. "How came you by it?" "Desert winds and death gave it to our care," the warlock said. "Yet the child within grows restless, as your fire stirs across seas. It will hatch soon, with or without mother." Nendavanchadis. Annie. Daenerys' jaw tightened. "You seek to trade." "To barter," corrected the warlock. "We wish but a taste of each dragon's flame, bound in crystal to fuel our arts. In return, the egg and the oath that 13 of Korth shall flat-kneed bend to your protectorate." Murmurs rose among gathered knights. Arya's hand drifted toward dagger. Jon's palm rested on Longclaw's pommel, though he did not draw. Daenerys' eyes glinted like molten silver. "I will not leash my dragons for parlor tricks." The warlock's thin smile revealed blackened gums. "Then they shall leash themselves when unborn sibling screams from shell. Fire answers fire." She set the egg gently upon wet shale, stepped back. "Decide quickly. Tide returns, and with it, fate's turning." She and her warlocks retreated to boat, pushing into surf. No arrow loosed. Daenerys' raised hand stilled archers. Jon picked up the egg. Hot as forge iron, heartbeat pulsing. He felt a presence inside, nascent but fierce. Back within Storm's End's gated yard, they set the egg upon velvet within a forge hearth. Sam measured temperature. Maester Walken applied rune-etched tongs to rotate carefully. Bran stared, eyes whitening. "It quickens faster than thought," he murmured. "Sorcery quickened by stolen fires." Daenerys stood rigid. "If it hatches unbonded, it will answer whomever first offers blood and command. The warlocks hope to claim it once chaos divides us." Jon exhaled. "Then bind it to unity. Hatch it under the moot's ring, in sight of every lord." Mutters of alarm rose. Gendry shook his head. "Forge's flame might shatter basalt floor." "Better stone than kingdoms," Jon replied. Sansa stepped forward. "Hatch it, yes, but not with fire alone." She opened a pouch of northern earth, black with life. "Let ice temper flame. Direwolf blood beats in dragons now. Let dragon blood warm wolf roots." Daenerys met her gaze. Centuries of feud bridged in a heartbeat. She inclined her head. "Together, then." That night, the great hall filled once more. Torches snuffed. Only moonshafts pierced slitted roof. In center of circle lay Valyrian brazier piled with coals. The pearl-black egg nested atop crimson embers. Lords ringed the shadows. Dragons perched at archways, eyes glowing banked embers. Rain ceased. Thunder distant. Daenerys and Jon approached opposite sides of brazier. She drew a slim dagger of dragonbone, cut her palm. Blood ran crimson. Jon followed, long claw's edge opening his hand. They extended arms over egg. Blood spattered its shell, sizzling. Sansa stepped between, sprinkling northern earth upon egg where blood pooled, forming dark paste. Bran spoke from shadows. When stone yields to blood and flame, dragon stirs. But temper must come, else heart burns hollow. He nodded to Aria, who tipped a pitcher of melted snow upon coal's edge. Steam hissed, swirling around shell without dousing heat. Flames licked higher, green at core where Wildfire's old residue still stained forge. Shell shimmered. Cracks appeared, molten gold veins widening. A shriek pierced hall, half chick's peep, half thunderclap. The egg burst. The new dragon spilled forth in cascade of black gold shards, wings wet, eyes blazing sulfur. It was larger than hatchlings of Winterfell. Smaller than Drogon's brood, but sinewy with preternatural vigor. It shook, scattering sparks. Every dragon in archways roared, some with challenge, others with welcome. The newborn turned, scenting air heavy with blood. It lunged toward center where Daenerys and Jon still bled. At last instant, it halted, nostrils flaring between them, choosing not one but both. It nuzzled each offered palm, smearing their mingled blood upon snout. Then it lifted head, emitting gout of colorless flame that left stone untouched, but sent ripples of heat across hall. A cheer rose, some fearful, most awestruck. Lords knelt instinctively, not to crown but to miracle. The newborn dragon fluttered damp wings, then folded them with measured grace. It stepped onto Sansa's scattered seeds. Tiny shoots burst green where claw touched. Daenerys' lips parted in wonder. What shall we name her? Jon met her eyes. Nymeria, after two queens who sailed seas and forged new worlds. Aria's smile flared feral. Sansa nodded approval. Asha Greyjoy called. Let her be symbol, not of conquest but of voyage to unknown. Edmure Tully added, and of rebirth from drowned hope. Bran murmured. Balance. Thus was Nymeria named, seventh dragon, born of ice, fire and soil. Bound to two riders and to realms they vowed to guard. Dawn after hatching found storms end awash with preparations for final articles. Charters were signed beneath banners stitched overnight with new sigil. Broken wheels sprouting sapling entwined by twin dragons. Silver and red, crowned not with gold but circlet of wheat. Yet shadows persisted. Word reached that warlocks anchored beyond Dalia's fires had vanished. Their ships set adrift, hulls empty save a single torn scrap of cobalt cloth pinned with obsidian eye. No trace of sorcerers nor their plots. Some whispered they slipped into castle tunnels. Others that Drogon's roar scattered them across breaker rocks. Jon suspected they retreated to weave deeper schemes, for magic seldom surrendered. But new dragon's birth signaled their loss. Nymeria answered to none but union. He stood on curtain wall, watching Nymeria toddle across Bailey, Varen guiding with gentle nudges. Skanir and Oryx tussled, tails slapping mud. Drogon perched on tower crown, surveying like dark sentinel. Ghost lay at Jon's feet, bandage clean. Footfalls approached. Daenerys, cloak bright despite overcast. She rested hand on parapet beside his. They shared quiet. Do you regret? She asked after long pause. That we are bound again to dragonfire and duty? He considered. I regret choices that burned innocence. I regret innocence lost to fear. But I do not regret hope reborn. She followed his gaze to Nymeria. This hope may yet demand sacrifice. We'll offer ourselves before we offer others. A soft smile ghosted her lips. Together. Below, lords mingled in courtyard, Dornish laughing with northerners over spiced wine. Ironborn trading smoked fish for Tyrell roses, Vale knights demonstrating falconry to unsullied who watched with mild confusion. The wheel creaked still, but its spokes no longer ground flesh. They turned soil. Bran's ravens circled high, cawing proclamation to winds racing north, south, east, west. Somewhere in Old Town, archmaesters would debate new precedents. In Bravos, bankers would calculate new ledgers. In remote Vale hamlets, children would chase tales of 7 dragons who guarded not gold nor gem but peace. Storm clouds shredded to reveal patch of azure. Sunlight fell upon parapet, warming Joan's knuckles. Daenerys' fingers brushed his, tentative, then firm. He laced his hand through hers. The future stretched sea-wide, horizon ablaze with promise and peril alike. But for first time, they faced it unafraid. Because dragons, born of cataclysm, now carried seeds of spring in their claws. Because ice and fire no longer warred, they wove. And the realm, battered and bleeding, at last inhaled not smoke, but a breath of gentle sky. The wind shifted, salty and sweet. Nymeria lifted snout, tasting it. She uttered a bright, trilling cry. The sound of dawn undiscovered. Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen answered together, voices quiet but sure. Dracarys, they whispered, not as command to burn, but as greeting to a world just beginning to warm beneath new sun. Oh, ha. Rain softened to a whispering mist beneath a pewter sky, wrapping storm's end in a wraith-gray hush. The wake of the moot lingered through the castle like incense. Half relief, half dread of what distant dawns might demand. In the courtyard, 7 dragons slumbered amid the steaming straw. Drogon stretched like a living fortress, wings draped over the smaller forms of his brood. Varen and Skinir twined around Nymeria, emerald and obsidian scales flickering each time the hatchling twitched in dream. Oryx lay curled beneath a dripping eave, golden eyes slitted but awake, guarding. Jon Snow leaned against a rain-slicked buttress, watching Nymeria's nostrils flare. Each exhale scattered tiny sparks that hissed to nothing in the damp. Ghost dozed at Jon's boots, ears twitching toward every distant creak. The dire wolf's flank was shaved and stitched, but the wound beneath salve knit well. Jon combed fingers through the thick white ruff, and let his thoughts wander the length of Westeros. Past the green ridges of the Reach now seeded anew. Past the Trident's muddy fords where crows still hopped amid lost helms. Past even the fastness of Winterfell, whose hearth smoke carried scents of pine and frost he missed in every breath. Steps stirred gravel. Sansa approached beneath a cloak the color of glacial dawn, face pale but resolute. She did not speak until she stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Robin's knights reported flickers in the old glass candles last night. She said, Maester Walken thinks the warlocks still work their tricks. Jon kept his gaze on Nymeria. Let them flicker. Trickery wilts beneath steady flame. Trickery thrives in shadow, Sansa countered. And storms cast many. You must prepare. Her words carried weight, like the first crack across spring ice. Jon nodded. Drogon flies the coast each dusk. Aria patrols the tunnels with a dozen unsullied. Bran sees far storms. Bran sees many storms, she replied softly. Not all can be flown around. Jon turned, studying her. Since Ned Stark's head fell at Baelor's sept, Sansa had worn composure like steel plate, but tonight starlight trembled in her eyes. Fear she seldom allowed. He laid a hand on her arm. We chose this path, Sans. Together. Her lips curved with brittle warmth. Then walk it together. She squeezed his fingers once before slipping away, cloak swirling to join mist. Midnight's chime found Daenerys in an antechamber above the forge, braiding her silver hair with practiced concentration. Missandei sat at the table compiling parchment stacks, signed accords, each heavy as a battlement stone. A single candle lit the ink sheen on her quill. How many lords remain undecided? Daenerys asked without turning. 7. Missandei answered. The Lord of Tarth says his council back home must approve. The new Lady of the Crag worries raiders will test her shore once Ironborn raids cease, and the small woods fear tax collection without a king's teeth. Daenerys tied the braid, exhaled. A throne's teeth bit them before. Now they fear gums. She rubbed the scar beneath her linen, feeling phantom cold where Joan's dagger once slid. Prepare letters for each. Offer aid in grain and shipwrights, and send Nymera's scale with the parchment. A token of guardianship. Missandei's brows arched. Scales are precious. Peace is dearer, Daenerys said. She crossed to the lone window, fingers brushing soot-blurred glass. Beyond, the courtyard torchlight glimmered on Drogon's ebony ridges. Jon still lingered, silhouette a dark tower against rising fog. Without shifting gaze, Daenerys asked, "Has the Qartheen fleet stirred? Gone, as scouts say, borne east on dawntide. But 2 coffers of wildfire were found in their wake, bobbing near the shoals. Dispose of them in the deepest trench," she ordered. "The world has drank enough green flame." Missandei bowed. "At once, my queen." Daenerys smiled faintly. "No crown now, remember? Only guardian. Old habits, your Daenerys." She laughed, light as cracked glass mending. Morning rose yellow pale. Lightning no longer rumbled, yet an uneasy hush coated the air. Bran requested a council in the hall where Nymera had hatched. Lords filtered in, shifting their new cloaks of woven wheel embroidery. Badges fresh enough the dye still bled if brushed by sleeve. Bran's ravens perched amid the rafters, restless. Jon stood beside Daenerys at the basalt circle. Aria flanked Bran's chair, boots planted wide, hand on dagger hilt. Gendry leaned on his hammer, grease still under nails. Sansa sat near Missandei, quill ready. Bran's voice came soft, carrying like leaf whisper. "Night does not yield because we choose dawn," he said. "Old powers stir, threats unbent by treaty. Before we send lords home, they must see unity beyond ink." He motioned to Podrick, who wheeled him forward until his chair's carved weirwood spokes touched basalt. Bran lifted one pale hand. Ravens everywhere quieted. The warlocks of Qarth left more than empty ships. They seeded dreams, visions twisting hearts who bend too easily to dark promises. I have watched their shadows slip beneath hull planks, into rat holes, through keyholes. They seek a king forged of nightmare, to wield flame and frost alike. Murmurs rippled. Edmure Tully stammered, "Nightmare kings?" "The others are gone." "Gone never means forgotten," Bran replied. His eyes clouded, white shot through with flickers of storm blue. "The magic that birthed White Walkers endures. Warlocks coax it toward new shape, knitting spells around the island of Enyath where butterflies die of cold unknown. From there they mean to call storms across narrow sea, raise krakens of smoke and bone." Jon's blood chilled. He heard echoes of hard boots on Castle Black's ramparts, memory of ice spiders, of death's hush. "What shield stands between them and realm?" he asked. Bran's gaze flicked to Nymera, who crouched on a ledge above the hall, head cocked. 7 dragons bound in concord. Then he swept eyes across lords. And 7 captains who wield no crowns but conscience. Daenerys straightened. "Speak plain, brother. You must leave Storm's End," Bran said. "Sail for Enyath with Drogon, Varen, Nymera. Jon beside you. Bring Gendry's hammer to batter gates of fear. Bring Aria's shadow, Missandei's voice. The warlocks weave illusions. They cannot stand in eyes of those who have walked death and disbelieved it." "Bendaman," lords erupted. "Who defends Westeros? Who guards river runs?" Jon raised a hand. "Drogon's brood remains here. Skanir, Oryk, the 3 blacklings. They'll deter any usurper." He turned to Lady Asha. "And the Iron Fleet will patrol Gulltown to Old Town under truce." Asha grinned. "Best excuse I've had to show my lads peace profits more than plunder." Arguments quelled, hammered by necessity. When hush fell, Bran concluded, "Leave at high tide. Warlocks bind their ritual to moon's apex 2 nights hence. Delay, and their king may rise. Then, preparation was swift as thunderclap. Before midday sun reached its zenith, the silver seagull lay ready. Hull caulked, deck scrubbed, holds brimmed with lemon water and salted lamb. Jon donned battered pauldrons, but left chest bare under leather jerkin. He must ride Varen mid-voyage and armor hindered. Daenerys replaced her violet cloak with one of sea-green silk, fringed in thread spun from melted slag of Blackwater ships. A symbol of ruin repurposed. Missandei gathered treatises and healing salves. Gendry shouldered his stormhammer. Aria donned a mask of dull gray leather stitched from manticore hide. Pockets bristling with vials of oil and powder gleaned from Ashai traders. Sansa watched from parapet, stern yet proud. Nymeria clung to Drogon's forearm as sailors hauled mooring lines. The elder dragon allowed the hatchlings wait, rumbling reassurance. Varen circled overhead, emerald wings clipping cloud wisps. Jon clasped Sansa in farewell. "Keep Winterfell hearths high. Keep your heart higher," she replied, squeezing his hand until nails bit. He found Bran near the gangplank. The boy's eyes were distant. "You may not see me on Neath," Bran murmured, "but no ravens line your path." Jon nodded. Words failed. Grey Worm saluted Daenerys. "Guardians go. Unsullied remain." She touched his shoulder. "Keep Storm's End strong." He bowed, bronze spear upright. Gangplank raised, sail unfurled. Drogon launched with thunderous downdraft, talons dripping seawater as he seized lift. The silver seagull heeled, then surged forth, prow cleaving gray waves toward the southern horizon. For 2 days, Kilmus trailing like white pennants. Daenerys and Jon alternated deck watches with Aria. Missandei kept charts. Gendry taught sailors tunes of Storm's drums. Nymeria spent daylight perched in the mizzen rigging, eyes glittering at passing dolphins. Varen nested amid ropes at prow, occasionally snapping at spray. On second night, clouds thinned to silver gauze. Moon swelled, near full. Jon stood at bow rail, cloak snagged by wind, mind replaying Bran's cryptic counsel. He traced the healed cut on palm, the night Nymeria hatched. Blood and soil and flame. Balance. Dot. Could dragons truly quell sorcery as old as Night King's birth? Footsteps padded. Arya sidled up, handing him waterskin. "Stopped brooding yet?" He drank. "Brooding sustains," he said, smiling wryly. She studied Nymera's silhouette. "Warlocks want a nightmare king, but nightmares feed on fear. Show them none, they starve." Jon tapped his temple. "I'll try, though ghosts claw within. Bemtambenha. We have ghost for claws." She nudged his shoulder, grin flashing. Below, lanterns glimmered, a string of lights bobbing far ahead. Arya narrowed eyes. "Islands of Enyath. We sailed fast." Jon followed her gaze. "Fireflies. No. Too large, too still in water." He fetched spyglass. Through brass scope emerged a sprawl of barges chained into floating ring. Each barge bristled with bronze braziers, vomiting sapphire flame. Figures in indigo robes stood motionless along edges, arms raised. At center of ring rose a stone dais etched with runes. Chained to dais stood weirwood trunk, its face carved in weeping expression, eyes weeping black resin that dripped onto dais grooves. Warlocks swayed in careful rhythm. Above, clouds converged, though wind spared the ship. Jon lowered glass. "They begin." Daenerys landed Drogon on quarterdeck. She strode to rail. "Signal readiness." Jon relayed to Missandei, who rang bronze bell thrice. Gendry's hammer thudded deck. Sailors loosed oars. Arya readied at prow, mask hiding eyes. Varen shrieked, wings snapping open. Nymeria answered, tail lashing. Jon vaulted rail, landing astride Varen. Damp scales cold under thighs. Daenerys mounted Drogon behind him. Hatchling Nymera flapped after. Small, but fierce. Silver Seagull veered aside, leaving dragons to plunge ahead. Sea roared. Moonlight fissured across wave peaks. As they neared Floating Ring, voices rose. A chorus of high keening syllables, twisting tongues. Sapphire fire columns leapt higher. Searing sky. Warlocks extended blah KK glass daggers. Blood hissed where it touched blue flame, turning sparks violet. Weirwood trunks' carved mouth gaped. Resin flowed thicker, glowing sickly green as wildfire. Atop dais crouched a figure cloaked head to toe, chains of electrum binding wrists and ankles. Under hood flickered eyes blue-white, like eternal frost. Jon's breath caught. A shade of the Night King? Daenerys' reply was iron. Burn it. Drogon roared, exhaling furnace-red inferno that split the night. Flame met sapphire pillars, crashed like surf against cliff. Where breaths touched, colors battled, red pushing, blue resisting. The air shrieked, pressure crushing eardrums. Varen dove, releasing jet of smoke and embers. Nymera followed with ghost white plume that ignited on contact, turning blue to choking black. Warlocks screamed, voices warbling. Some toppled into sea ablaze, dye bleeding from skin. But others extended daggers, tracing sigils mid-air that formed shields of shimmering glass. Drogon's flame shattered on barriers, scattering shards that spun through wind like knives. On deck below, Aria leapt from ship to ring barge, rolling across wet planks. She flung vials. Oil burst into purple fire where warlocks stood, shattering their barriers. Gendry sailed after on rope. Hammer crashing onto robed skulls with crunch of storm against cliff. Jon guided Varen beneath dais chain. The dragon's claws raked at links, iron screeched but held. The hooded figure raised head, face frozen in rictus of agony. Ice veining cheeks, lips sewn with wire. Yet eyes shifted, meeting Jon's. In them he saw not malice, but plea. Daenerys landed Drogon atop dais, crushing braziers. She leapt down, blade drawn. A warlock surged, staff crackling violet. She parried. Slide of silver, then spun. Blue blood spurted. Drogon caught another warlock in jaws, bones cracked. Nisande on ship's rail. Chanted words in High Valyrian. Reading from scroll of ancient warding. Wind curved around her, funneling voice into cyclone that battered warlock chant, fraying syllables like rotted rope. Chains glowed spectral. Brand's ravens appeared by dozens, winging around dais, talons raking across warlock faces, eyes plucking jewels of their power. Warlock line faltered. Barriers flickered. Jon dismounted, hacking at chain with dragon glass dagger. Varen bit Link, molten sparks. Link snapped. Hooded figure collapsed. Jon slit wire, stitching mouth. Breath of frost spilled, turning his own lips numb. Aria rushed up, pressing Wildfire warm dagger to ice seam, sealing. Daenerys approached, lowering hood gently. Beneath lay a young woman's face, skin deathly pale, hair white with frost, yet not dead. Jon realized warlocks had forged vessel for their nightmare king, not of bone, but living heart frozen to house ancient power. The woman's lips moved. A breath. Is this Dawn? Words fragile shards. Jon nodded once. Tears of ice melted on her cheeks. Warlock leader shrieked incantation. Braziers exploded, sending shards of frozen flame outward. One shard ripped across Daenerys' arm, slicing flesh. Blood spattered dais. Warlock seized moment, hurling cobalt flail at Nymera. The hatchling shrieked, struck mid-wing, tumbling. Drogon roared, launching high then diving. Mouth opened, but flame flickered. Warlock shouted binding word. Invisible lash coiled Drogon's jaws. Jon hurled himself forward, intercepting lash with dragonglass blade. Spark of white light burst. Lash snapped. Drogon's jaws freed, released torrent of red so bright, sea turned crimson mirror. Warlock disintegrated to ash. Braziers guttered. Blue flame died. Druids of Karth broke ranks, some leaping into sea. Aria slid across slick deck, finishing stragglers. Gendry shattered final staff. Missandei's chant crescendoed. Scroll burning from bottom up, igniting letters that melted into stars before drifting over black water. Silence fell, broken only by hiss of cooling iron and dragons' heavy breaths. They ferried the Frostwoman aboard Silver Seagull. Jon wrapped fur about her trembling form. She slept, warmth flushing cheeks faintly rose. Missandei tended Daenerys' arm, binding with silk steeped in firemilk. Nymere's wing tear stitched by Sam with wyvern gut, the hatchling grumbling but stilling under Drogon's watchful growl. Gendry leaned on rail, hammer dripping sea. Warlocks scattered east, he said. We burned their barges. Aria wiped blade on rag. Scattered snakes grow new heads. We'll need eyes. Jon nodded, looking to ravens perched along sail yard, feathers ruffled silver in moonlight. Bran will watch. As dawn tinted east, Silver Seagull turned north toward Storm's End. The Frostwoman woke briefly, grasping Jon's wrist. Her voice faint. Name? Me. Jon glanced at Daenerys. She spoke softly. Skadi. Goddess who walks snow, yet hunts summer. The woman smiled, drifting back to healing sleep. That evening, Daenerys and Jon sat aft, Nymeria and Varen nuzzling at their legs. Sea rolled gentle. Gulls called. They shared quiet bread, salt tang of breeze flavoring each bite. Finally Jon asked, will Realm trust dragons now they've witnessed sorcery worse? They saw dragons defend. She brushed wind-tossed hair from face. Fear lingers, but hope seeds. He watched suns sink, molten copper, smearing horizon. When this voyage ends, where does path lead? A protectorate without me as queen. She said, I will ride skies where threat rises. You will anchor soil where life grows. He turned. You speak as though we part. Like wings and root, we part only to bind world from both horizons. Her smile held promise of dawn. He cupped her bandaged arm. Then we part never. Wings will return to roots. Roots rise in memory of wings. She laughed low, leaning forehead upon his. Nymeria chirruped, dozing Varen rumbled. Drogon's roar answered from mast height, caught by wind and scattered. Not as battle cry but lullaby. And over them whirled ravens black as midnight dreams. Sentinel of a boy whose eyes spanned centuries, knitting threads of ice and fire into tapestry whose final pattern even he could but glimpse. Yet in that loom of fate, two threads shone brighter than all. Guardians who once bled the world, now sworn to mend it. Morning would bring Storm's End in golden haze, lords awaiting tidings, banners fluttering with anxious hope. Stories would be told of barge rings and frost queens and dragons' concord. Some would doubt, some exult, but all would blaze with yearning. That peace hammered upon anvil of fear could hold if tended. Jon Snow closed eyes, hearing ocean heartbeat beneath keel. He felt Varen's warm hum, Daenerys' steady breath, the fragile pulse of Skadi's new life below deck. He felt ice memory and fire's promise twine inside him like twin hatchlings of destiny. And he believed, not in crowns or swords, but in dawn that returns after longest night. Wind shifted. Sails bellied. Ship surged northward. 7 dragons overhead traced arcs against paling stars, living runes across scroll of sky, writing first lines of a tale the realm would shape with every choice henceforth. No trumpets, no crowns, no blooding charters could seal that story. Only vigilant hearts, ready claws, and the simple vow whispered below breath on every deck, every keep, every hearth. Balance. The word carried across waves, tucked in gulls' cries, echoed in dragons' wings. It rode dawn to shore, settling like dew. And the realm, once broken by wheel, for the first time began, truly, to heal. Ka. Salt haze draped the dawn like gauze as the silver seagull ghosted into Shipbreaker Bay. Storm's End loomed ahead, its drumkeep a charcoal silhouette against a sky shaded eggshell blue, gulls looping around the battlements like scraps of torn parchment. Jon Snow stood on the forecastle where the rigging creaked a low lament, one hand on Varen's neck ridges. The emerald dragon's scales drank the first light, throwing green flecks across Jon's jerkin. Nymeria crouched on the yardarm above, tail wrapped around a spar. Drogon rode the thermals in a lazy spiral overhead, each vast wing beat cracking the stillness like a smith's hammer on new steel. Behind the flagship, the rest of the small convoy labored north, a Taroshi cog laden with reach grain, a Drummond bearing Dornish masons, and 2 swift iron-born scouting galleys, now flying the direwolf and dragon pennant, rather than the kraken. Gendry emerged from below, wiping soot from his jaw. "Cook stews more tar than mutton," he muttered. "But it fills a belly." He peered at the coast. "The new breakwater's nearly finished. My lads have been busy. Can't fault their loyalty when half a dozen dragons might land on their workshop roof." Jon's lips twitched. "Fear forges dedication faster than a whip." "Fear tempered," Gendry corrected, hefting the stormhammer across his shoulder. "That's the secret." Aria padded up the forward ladder, mask dangling loose in her hand. Sea spray spangled the braids that framed her keen gray eyes. No black sails on the horizon. Either the warlocks fled far east or they dived with the sharks of Enyath. She tugged off her weather cloak and draped it on a belaying pin. "Sansa will want the full tale before dusk. And the lords, 7 help us, will want 10 versions each." "We'll give them one," Jon said. "Truth, unburnished." Arya snorted softly. "Truth tastes different on every tongue. Make sure the story you serve isn't too sharp for theirs." She tapped the hilt of needle, which still showed not a speck of rust despite the sea air. "I can remove the burrs if needed." Dawn brightened. Deckhands hauled on the braces, angling the main lateen. Missandei, quill tucked behind her ear, emerged to check the charter satchels stowed in canvas pouches near the companionway. She nodded to Jon, then disappeared again without wasting words. There would be many letters to deliver, and she intended them all to arrive crisp and dry. Daenerys finally appeared from the stern castle, Scotty drifting at her side like morning fog. The frost-touched woman wore a wool cloak lined in lamb's fleece, but beads of white still clung to her lashes. Some nights she sweated, others she shivered. Maester Sam believed the ice magic threaded through her veins would take moons to thaw fully. Yet her gaze was clear now, soft and wondering as she watched Drogon catch a thermal curve. Daenerys offered her an arm. Scotty accepted with tentative fingers, marveling anew at warmth. A single raven wheeled overhead, Bran's silent envoy, and vanished toward the keep. Anchor chains rattled. The seagull glided into the lee of the stone mole Gendry's men had raised from quarried granite blocks. Asha Greyjoy's signal horn boomed from a rusty galley. 2 notes, allies returning. From the ramparts rose echoing cheers. Small folk, soldiers and foreign artisans, thronged the wharf. The smell of frying oysters drifted across the water, chased by the fresher scent of wet pine where new scaffolding clung to bastions. Sansa waited at the quay with Brienne, Robin Arryn, Edmure Tully, and Lady Para of the Crag. She wore her snowy fox trim, eyes watchful but bright. When Jon disembarked, she stepped forward first, clasping his hand between both of hers. "You look older," she observed. "Blame the sea," Jon said, then added lower, "and the things beneath it." Her smile barely curved, but her shoulders loosened. Daenerys followed, one arm cradling Scotti's waist. Murmurs swept the crowd as they beheld the pale woman, yet no one knelt. Sansa's letters had been plain. There were no queens or kings now, only guardians sworn. Still, old habits lingered. People bowed heads or dipped knees until Daenerys thanked them in the dialects of the Reach and the Stormlands, a gentle courtesy rather than command. Gendry strode down the gangplank, hammer slung, hammering back the hush with his booming greeting. Lord Paramounts, ladies, lads, look lively. We've dragons to stable and beer to brew. Laughter rippled, easing tension. Aria vaulted the rail, landing light as a gull. She gave Sansa a quick, fierce embrace before melting sideways into the throng. Drawn by the scent of fresh pies, Robin Arryn attempted a greeting but swallowed it when Needle's sheathed point flicked warning by his thigh. He stepped aside with a crimson blush. Verin leapt from mast to pier, claws sparking on wet stone. Dockhands flinched, then gaped as the emerald dragonling sniffed a basket of crabs and sneezed steam, cooking one instantly. Nymeria fluttered overhead, still smaller but daring, and stole a shrimp from a vendor's bucket, nearly causing the man to faint. Drogon sat down well outside the walls where a new paddock had been built, eyes half-lidded, content while his children explored. Grey Worm approached with unsullied banners, saluted briskly. "No disturbances while you sailed, my guardian." The word tasted odd on his tongue, but he steadied. "The Lord Bannermen await your report in the Solar." "After the dragons eat," Jon said, earning an approving rumble from Verin. The Solar of Storm's End had been transformed. The heavy oak table sanded smooth, its surface inlaid with an intricate wheel pattern of ironwood and dark cedar. Gendry's handiwork. Around it stood high-backed chairs wrought from melted spear shafts. No throne dominated. Daenerys and Jon each claimed seats equal to the rest. Maesters Walken and Sam unrolled fresh parchment maps, Enyath, Lys, Karth, the summer sea currents, and cryptic annotations from Brand. Edmure Tully drummed fingers, trying for patience. Lady Para pressed a handkerchief to her lips each time Scatty's wheezing breath turned visible frost. Robin Arryn fidgeted, tugging at falcon clasp. "Da!" Asha propped boots on a stool, smelling faintly of tar and rum. Jon began, voice measured. "The warlock flotilla. The sapphire fires. The weirwood chained as conduit." Daenerys described the moment Drogon's flame met cold sorcery. Missandei recorded every detail. Sam expounded on ancient Valyrian accounts of ice sigils that could freeze godswood sap. Walken speculated on the resin's hue, manifestation of corrupted old gods' tears. Lords exchanged uneasy looks. Faiths divergent found common revulsion. When Drogon's fire cut through their glass shields, Daenerys finished, the spell unraveled. It will take them moons, perhaps years, to weave another loom so fragile. She opened a velvet pouch and slid onto the table a shard of the broken barrier. Iridescent, razor thin. It pulsed faintly like a dying star. But they will try again. Robin risked touching it. A tremor of cold shot up his arm and he withdrew with a squeak. 7. Save us. 7 dragons now guard us. Gendry reminded, voice level. He placed the storm hammer's head atop the wheel pattern. And hammer and plow. Para of the Crag leaned forward, golden curls bouncing. Guardianship demands patrols. My coast still sees raiders from Skagos selling lizard lion scales. The dragons frighten them, but we can't summon Drogon for every skiff. Jon nodded. Drogon remains here to deter greater fleets. For smaller matters, Oryk and the Blacklings will rotate patrols. One sunrise flight each along the western shore, then home before midday. We'll draft schedules. House Crag may request signal fires lit if sails are sighted. Nendani. Edmure Tully cleared throat. And the Riverlands? The Mummersford swamps spawn brigands who scoff at charters. My levies are stretched between levies and post-war famine. Daenerys glanced to Missandei, who drew forth a sealed scroll. Highgarden's new steward offers grain at half tithe for 2 years, delivered via barges escorted by Vale longbows. In exchange, Lady Tyrell asks assistance rebuilding levee dikes. The masons from Dorne have volunteered. Agreements, murmured acceptance. The conversation turned to Scotty. Sam explained her body temperature flux and the risk of arcane backlash if she remained untended. We need a place where fire and frost can mingle. Warm springs, perhaps. Sansa offered. Winterfell's crypt aquifers feed the hot pools. She may heal there. And Bran's close. Scotty, lifting milk-washed eyes, whispered, Snow and stone sang in my dreams. I will go. Jon suppressed a shiver. Sending a vessel of half-frozen magic to Winterfell felt like inviting winter early. Yet Bran had foreseen. He murmured assent. Grey Worm announced garrison reports. Scorpions dismantled, no spies caught crossing the gullet since the moot. But Raven from Eastwatch says traders glimpsed blue lights near Skagos cliffs last fortnight. Aria's eyes narrowed. Skagos again. She flicked gaze toward Jon. He understood. Say. The haunted village. The stories of cannibal sorcerers. They would need to sweep such shadows next. Missandei presented the final parchment. The protectorate oath. Lords had signed with wax signet, but one signature remained blank. She slid ink and quill to Jon. He hesitated. This oath demanded renouncing all hereditary claim. He had never wanted a crown, but giving away even the possibility felt like severing ghostly roots. Then he thought of Longclaw left sheathless for weeks, proof that a sword could guard without slaying, and he wrote Jon of House Stark, sworn guardian of balance. Missandei passed quill to Daenerys. Her violet eyes traced the lines already penned. Gendry Baratheon, Sansa Stark, Asha Greyjoy, Edmure Tully, Robin Arryn, Para of the Crag, Doria Tyrell, Martell Envoy Nymor, Royce of Runestone. She set nib to parchment. Daenerys, of no house but fire, sworn guardian of balance. Ink dried with faint steam where her letters met the page. Missandei sanded the charter, rolled it, and sealed with a wax bloom shaped like twin wings broken free of a wheel. Twilight draped the keep in sheets of rose gold. Storm's End's courtyard bustled. Blacksmiths showing new destriers, Dothraki stable hands pitching straw, Septas distributing bread to refugees who'd begun to trickle from war-torn hamlets. The dragons roamed overhead like living constellations. Nymeria discovered her voice, letting out a chirping trill each loop that startled goats in pens below. Jon found Daenerys atop the south tower parapet, cloak billowing. She watched the sea, turned blood-red by sunset. Scotty sat huddled near a brazier, palms extended to flames though snowflakes still formed on her brow. Another council done, Daenerys said without turning. More promises. Promises are seeds. Some sprout. Some rot. Jon leaned on the crenellation. We water them with resolve. He gestured to Scotty. She's warming. Slowly. Sam says her core temperature is like melted permafrost. Stable, but fragile. Her smile was rueful. We've saved her life, but stolen her purpose. She was forged a vessel of death. Now she must learn to live. Jon nodded. We'll teach her. Wolves and dragons together. He looked toward the far horizon where the dusk blossomed purple. There will be more vessels made unless we break the forges. Warlocks, corsairs, and lords who miss their crowns. Daenerys met his gaze. In it, he saw the woman who had walked fire and lost herself. Then found again, among ashes. Then we fly, until no shadow forges alone. This realm, that realm. We carry flame to warm, not burn. They stood silent as Drogon soared above. Varen on one flank, Scanir on the other. Nymeria flitting beneath their shadows like a firefly trailing comets. Weeks passed, full of the work of peace more exhausting than any battle. Drafting harbor tariffs. Arbitrating border stones moved by flood. Quelling riots when rumors of dragon eggs for sale sparked frenzy in gullible markets. Jon rode patrol along the King's Road with a mixed column. Unsullied, Tully pikes, Dothraki scouts, who now called themselves herders of the dragon wind. Wherever they traveled, farmers left offerings. Bushels of oats, jars of blackberry jam, detachable crossbow prods as proof of disarmament. Once they found a roadside pyre where former slavers had been burned by villagers. Jon forced an inquest, demanding lawful trials rather than vengeance. Justice had to look different now. Daenerys spent dawn flights teaching Drogon's brood formation spirals. She encouraged Drogon to fly lower over hamlets, so children could wave wooden dragon toys rather than cower under beds. Some nights she and Missandei sailed to Dannettstown to inspect the new tannery that tanned hides without tannin runoff fouling streams. The Lady Para wrote songs about these visits, performed by minstrels who once sang only of heroes who died. Aria vanished for stretches. returning with blades of Secrecy steel and tales of having slit a sorcerer's throat before his ghostlight summoned more Draugr. She never boasted, only logged the kill, washed blood from her gloves, and slept under Drogon's wing like a shadow curled by fire. Gendry and his smiths cast new alloys. Chain links that glowed amber when sorcery approached, clappers for warning bells. Sam and Wolkan compiled treatises on Frostfire, sending copies to the Citadel by Raven. One copy vanished en route. Bandits? Or warlocks? Jon doubled escort contingents. Through it all, Scotty walked the courtyards, tracing fingertips along dewy grass, marveling at butterflies that landed on her knuckles before icing over then thawing unharmed. Children followed her, calling her Snow Lady. She laughed, a tinkling glassy sound unfamiliar to her own ears. At night she slept in a chamber warmed by hot stones, dreaming of forests no one had seen. At High Summer's threshold, Sansa summoned a convocation to finalize the Protectorate's first census, essential for reallocating harvest surpluses. Lords assembled once more in Storm's End's Great Hall. Bran attended through ravens only, eyes dimming in Winterfell's Godswood while his voice carried on wind. During midday recess, Jon watched Dottie wander the shadowed aisle between the new ironwood pews. She paused before a stained glass window depicting a wheel broken into 7 shards, dragons lifting petals of wheat. Color swam across her cheeks. "Is this hope?" she asked when Jon joined her. "It's promise," he said. "Hope is what you carry inside." She touched her breastbone. "Once I carried only ice. Now I feel pain. Pain is part of living," he said. "And living is worth the ache." He guided her toward the open doors where Nymeria waited with wings furled, offering a ride across the ramparts. Scotty climbed onto the hatchling's back. There was room, barely, and Nymeria lifted gently, spiraling over the bailey while Goldcloak refugees below sang a barroom hymn, remade into lullaby. Jon found Daenerys beneath the arch of the smithy where sparks flew like orange bees. She wielded tongs, not sword, helping Gendry twist a glowing iron rod into a ring. She handed it to Jon. "It's for Varen's landing spike. The old one cracked," she said. "Even dragons need steady moorings." He weighed the iron, lighter than expected, etched with glyphs for balance and dawn. "It will hold," he told her. Something in her eyes flashed, a mingling of ember and topaz. "So will we," she replied. The convocation restarted with much stamping of feet. Tally scrolls were read, disputes settled. At dusk, Bran's ravens delivered a final message. The Citadel ratified the charter, binding maesters to record laws equally among gods and smallfolk. Bells rang out across the keep. No king's coronation, but the birth of a realm lit by twin flames. Feasts followed, Dornish dates stuffed with goat cheese, river trout glazed in cider, thin loaves stamped with direwolf dragon crest. Musicians played a new composition, the Protectorate's promise, its refrain carrying across torchlit courtyards. Scotty danced slow with Sam, laughter thawing frost. Grey Worm smiled behind a goblet of natty wine. Aria perched on parapet, humming softly, eyes always scanning. Jon stepped away, needing air. He climbed the winding stair to the battlement where the breeze smelled of sea lavender. Drogon rested beyond the curtain wall, black silhouette against starlight. Varen glided overhead, Nymeria close on his tail. Jon leaned into the Merlon, listening to the settling stones of Storm's End. Footsteps. Daenerys joined him, hair silver in moonlight. She bore 2 wooden cups of mead. They sipped in silence. "Tomorrow," she said finally, "we fly north. Winterfell awaits Skadi's healing." Bran calls it essential. Jon nodded. "And the dragons should know snows too, not just salt wind. Will the North accept me?" "They'll accept what I accept," he said. "They've watched me die and rise. They'll watch us both live." She hesitated. "And after Winterfell?" "East," he answered. "Rumors of slavers massing in the Jade Sea. South, Plague in Dorna's ports. Balance forever tips. She turned, searching his face. We may never rest, Jon. Our rest is the wind beneath their wings. He gestured skyward. She smiled, sad and bright. Then let us keep flying. He lifted her hand to his lips. No royal ritual, just quiet vow. Somewhere below, the revel reached crescendo. But up here, starlight wove their breaths into misty lace. A single raven fluttered down, landing on the parapet. A scrap of vellum tied to its leg bore Bran's seal. Jon untied it, reading by moonbeam. Ice and fire entwine as roots and wings. The song endures. He folded it, tucked into jerkin. Drogon rumbled, sensing dawn though darkness still lay thick. One by one, the other dragons joined, landing on tiled roofs, talons clacking. Nymeria bobbed, eager. Scotty's silhouette appeared on the stair, cloaked in thick furs. Sansa accompanied her, carrying a satchel of northern herbs. Aria brought Ghost, whose tail wagged a beat in greeting. Daenerys breathed deep. Ready? Jon felt the hush that comes before first light, when the world seems to hold breath. Always, he answered, mounting Varen. Sansa helped Scotty astride Nymeria. Aria vaulted onto Skynir. Daenerys climbed Drogon, hair streaming. With a thunder of wings, they rose. Meal smoke trailed, torches flickered. Bells chimed farewell. Storm's End dwindled to a ring of stone on a dark sea painted silver. Northward they flew, crossing fields where peasants looked up, not in terror, but in wonder. Children waved banners stitched of hay twine. At Maidenpool, fishermen lit lanterns that formed a spiral on the water, guiding flight. At River Run, Edmure's men fired fireworks, no more than bright sparks, but joyous. Night gave way to dawn. Frost curled on dragons' wingtips as they crossed the neck where mist clung thick. Varen shivered, but Jon murmured calm. Drogon's furnace breath washed over younger wings. Sun crowned the horizon, staining wetlands copper. Ghost howled from Arya's saddle as Winterfell's towers emerged from snow-hushed forest. Smoke lifted from chimneys. Banners stitched with wheel-breaking wing flapped. Bran waited by the heart tree, chair wheels half buried in frost. He smiled. Soft, knowing. When dragons touched down beside burbling hot springs, steam curling around ice scales. Scatty dismounted stiffly. Bran raised a hand. Roots stirred beneath the pool. Warm water gushed, swirling with flecks of weirwood sap. Scotty stepped in. Frost hissed, melted. Tears slid down her face, not freezing but warm, reflecting sunrise. Around them, dragons folded wings, breaths steaming. People gathered, cows lowing at new scent. Sansa emerged, cloak whipping, but her smile was wide. Jon slipped from Varen's back to stand beside Daenerys. Snow began to fall. Light, feathery, harmless. It kissed their hair, melted on skin. For a heartbeat he remembered the wall of blue fire, screams in Doomfall, ashes in King's Landing. Then he heard Bran's ravens singing in the heart tree, a melody older than thrones. Balance. Dot. He clasped Daenerys' hand. She squeezed. Together they watched Scotty sink to shoulders, ice steaming away. The Frost Woman's laughter rang, pure as morning bells. Children cheered. Snowflakes swirled around 7 dragons basking in winter's light, around a direwolf with scarred flank healed, around a gathered realm knitting itself whole. Past and future crossed in that courtyard, a moment neither fire nor ice could claim alone. A new story inhaled its first full breath, and the world, scarred but steadfast, exhaled. Not smoke, but misty notes of dawn-cooled peace, drifting skyward on dragon wings, carried to every horizon where shadows once ruled. The song was not ended. It had only just begun, line by line, heartbeat by heartbeat, wingbeat by wingbeat, as guardians of balance traced spirals across a sky no longer claimed by fear, but shared by possibility.